happening, YouTube? It's your homie S. Dot coming back to use another video. And today's video is going to be simply for one thing. Wave 1 card review. We're going to be talking about the battle cards today, and in another video I'm going to be talking about the characters. Why am I doing this? Well, because my boy Maurice gave me this idea, so shout out to my homie Maurice. I thought this would be a cool, fun series to give my own spin and my own take on a lot of these cards, and why these cards were good in this format, or in the format they were in, and then do they see any competitive viability or any viability in general with the current format that we're in. This is something that I actually plan on doing after every wave. I will give it, maybe I won't do it literally every single wave, but maybe give it a couple waves and then do like a series throwback or something like that. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it yet, but I do have to say I got to pay homage to Vector Sigma and their Tech Talks, because Tech Talk definitely, I don't remember if they did anything for Wave 1, but definitely for Wave 2 on, they've done an analysis on every single battle card from battle card and character from Wave 2 all the way up to currently Wave 5 type Masters Attack. So this was just something just new for me to do for my channel. I'm usually doing deck profiles or gameplay and things like that. A couple of comp camp interviews. By the way, I got a third one coming to you guys soon, so be looking forward to that. And yeah, so this should just be something different for the channel, and not to take away anything from the Tech Talks, but just to give you another angle. And if you haven't heard those Tech Talks before, and you're a new player especially, you can hear me talk about these now and my take on these cards. And I'm talking about every single one from A to Z, even the cards from the Metroplex deck. So there's 81 battle cards total, and then you have, well, 3 battle cards from the Metroplex structure deck, and then you also have the 2 battle cards from the SDCC 2018 pack as well that I'll be going through. So this is going to be long. I get to do what I like to do, and that's talk. I'm usually pretty quiet actually, but when I get to talking, it just keeps going and going and going. And so sit back and enjoy this hour or so of me talking about Wave 1. And also, this video can potentially be helpful for new players coming into the game that are just getting into the set or getting into the game. And also, this video could actually be very helpful for any new players coming to the game that aren't familiar with the Tech Talks yet. I still recommend going to check out their Tech Talk videos and get an idea of what battle cards are good now. Now we're 5 waves in, and go from there. So definitely something for new players to definitely look into. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the like button if you like this video, and definitely if you would like to see more content like this in terms of I plan on doing the Wave 1 characters next. So be looking out for that very soon. And I also do this for Wave 2 through 5 as well, if you guys like this video as well. So I'll see how our reception gets, and I'll keep going from there. But without further ado, like I said, let's jump into the battle cards. First up, we have Aerial Recon. Aerial Recon is an orange utility, and it gives +1 defense, and it says put on planes only. And when the upgraded character attacks or defends, you may look at the top card or you may scrap it. So this is actually one of our first focus-oriented cards. I feel like this is one of the only, if not the only. What I think is very unique about this card is it's an orange battle icon, so you can play it in an aggressive plane deck. And it has it's a utility that gives +1 defense. So you can have an armor on that gives you +1 defense or whatever, and then also have a utility. Utilities are very rare to give +1 defense. So that's something that's very niche about this card, which is really cool. I think for the time being, when this card first came out, it was a card that probably didn't see as much play because there were stronger battle cards. But even in like today's metagame, if you were to call yourself going back to cards like this, I could actually see this card potentially being played in a dedicated aggro planes deck. Maybe as a one-of, you're not going to probably play more than one, but like I said, this is one of the most unique utilities that we have actually, I think, in the game, being that it's orange and it's utility, and it also gives some type of stat buff. Next up, we have Agility of Bumblebee. Agility Bumblebee simply says, when this is on Bumblebee and he attacks, draw 1 card. At the time, this card was cool. It gets +1 attack, and it's on color, so it's cool for what it wants to do. And I mean, it's good, obviously, on the Bumblebee Legendary Warrior. But drawing, I mean, I'm not gonna say drawing card is not good, because even when a fire drive attacks, drawing a card is very good. But for the time being, I don't think this card was. There are just better battle cards to play other than this card. But for what it's worth, if you did play a dedicated Bumblebee deck, it could be good. In today's day and age, speaking for all the way up to Wave 5, this card I don't think would be viable, because we have Lieutenant Bumblebee from Wave 2, who when he attacks, you can discard a card from your hand and draw 2 cards. So having this card on him as well allows you to pretty much, you could use this card on Lieutenant Bumblebee to give him 7 attack, and again, it's on color if you're playing an aggressive card deck. And so you'll discard 1 card to draw 2, and you can chain that in whatever order you want. So you probably discard your whatever improvised shield, draw 2 cards, and then draw an additional card with the agility of Bumblebee. That could be decent if there weren't other better battle cards. I think a lot of this ends up being their a power creep of newer battle cards. But again, like I said, it is +1 attack. If you're playing a fun deck, which we're going to talk about casual, and playing like a triple Bumblebee deck, I could definitely see you playing 1 or 2 of these to be able to definitely dig through your deck and get to some of your stronger cards. Next up, we have Armed Hovercraft. Man, oh man. Tell you about Armed Hovercraft. When I first saw Armed Hovercraft, I thought this card was bad. When I first got into the game, trying to understand, how good direct damage was. It wasn't hard, but it was like, okay, deal 1 damage to everybody. That guy has 14. I'm only putting him at 13. What's the big deal? So I think the best way to explain Armed Hovercraft to a new player is look at your opponent's, or look at your health pool and your opponent's health pool in total. So if they have a character with 10 health, a character with 15 health, and another character with 10 health, they have 35 health total. They have one giant health pool of 35, not individually. They technically are individual, but they have one giant health pool of 35. Armed Hovercraft deals 1 to each enemy. So if they have 3 enemies, or excuse me, if they have 3 enemies, if your opponent has 3 characters on their side of the battlefield, then you'll do 1 damage to each character. That goes from 35 down to 32. And that's actually a big number. 3 doesn't seem like a lot, and it's 1 across every character. But just having that 1 spread damage across every character is very valuable towards the end of the game. And I think another way to really explain this is as you start playing the game, or anybody that can vouch for that's been playing the game, the power of 1 is very ridiculous. And when I say the power of 1, what does that mean? Defending and your opponent missing you by 1, or you attacking and you missing your opponent by 1. It happens way too often than a lot of people would probably like to admit, and it's something that we can go on and rage about all day, about how, yep, I lost this game because I missed this character by 1 and it was able to stand back up and attack me again. So the power of 1 is very powerful on the other sense of you leave a character at 1, next turn you have this Armed Hovercraft in your hand, so you plan on your next turn to be able to put Armed Hovercraft with one of your ranged characters, deal 1 damage to that character, get rid of it, and then get into another character without having to waste another attack into that character. So direct damage is very, very strong in this game. Definitely recommend it, especially with Wave 5, which we'll get into weeks from now when we finally get into the Wave 5 set. Direct damage is insane right now, and it's definitely better than it's ever been. All right, guys, on to the next battle card. Next up, we have Backup Plan. Backup Plan is a white battle icon. Scrap your hand, draw 3 cards. It's a good contingency plan when you're low on cards to be able to, get rid of dead improvised shields or peace through tyrannies or whatever and be able to draw 3 cards. And it's also a white battle icon. It's one of the better white battle icons. And of course, remember white battle icons, when you flip the first white for your battle flips, you are able to flip an additional 2 cards. So if you flip 2 whites for your first 2 free battle cards, you will still only flip 2 more additional battle cards, whether you're attacking or defending. You won't continuously flip 2 more in a chain, because that would be kind of ridiculous. And yeah, so per mechanics of the game, your first battle, your white battle icon, you would just flip 2 cards. So definitely one of the better draw cards to be able to play out of this set. Definitely something that aggro decks would probably like to play more. If you're trying to fish for a grenade launcher or whatever, scrap your hand and draw cards. It's also good if your opponent were to security checkpoint you and strip you of all of your upgrades. There might be a point where you might actually want to play Backup Plan for your actions of the turn, and then hopefully draw an upgrade that's playable and play that for your turn to progress. Battle Ready. Battle Ready is an orange battle icon, and you give when you play it, each of your characters gets +1 for every upgrade on it. So this is a card that's very situational in terms of getting the best bang for your buck. You ideally want to have at least 2, maybe 3 upgrades, which is probably very hard because remember, you can only play 1 action and 1 upgrade per turn. So trying to play a card that you have to, unless you were able to cheat out 2 upgrades in 1 turn, which was very hard in Wave 1, you weren't able to really get a good value out of this card. I guess the best bang for your buck for this card would be to have a weapon, armor, and utility on your character, and then play Battle Ready, and then your character would get +3. There's other small situations where you could have at least 2 of your characters, like one of your characters have an armor and a weapon, and then another one of your characters have a weapon, and then so your one character that has 2 upgrades gets +2, and then another character gets +1. So it's a nice spread of a battle pump. Is good potentially in aggressive decks. If I didn't watch the Vector Sigma videos and things when I first started, this would be a card I would definitely have played, but being how situational it is and it's more of a late game card, you really don't get the best value that you would like to get out of this card unless you were, like I said, able to be able to get multiple upgrades in your character in 1 turn. There's one battle card I could think of, and we're skipping ahead here, but like attack drones, for example. So attack drones is a white-green weapon that you are able to put on. When you play one on a character, you can play an additional one and play an additional one. So you can play all 3 attack drones and get +3 attack to one of your characters, and then play Battle Ready and then get +3 attack with that attack drone. So overall, coming back here to Wave 1, let's bring it back. Yeah, it's a situational card, and it's more of a mid to late game card, and probably not really worth it when there's better cards that we're going to be talking about here that's worth playing. Blast Shields. Okay, so Blast Shields is a blue battle icon, and it's a +2 defense, and when it defends, you scrap the armor afterwards. So it's good with cards like Hunker Down, which we'll be talking about here later. But otherwise, I think there were better armors in the set that stayed on, rather. So those cards were a little bit better. This is maybe like potentially 1 or 2 of at a time. Nowadays, this card I don't think would be very good because we have cards like Composite Armor that tanks would play. There are just a lot better armors these days, like the rock, paper, scissors armors and things like that are just better than this card. So this card has kind of been power crept, but it could have some random spot like one-of uses in certain decks. But overall, this card has definitely been power crept by some of the newer cards. Next up, we have Body Armor. Body Armor is probably one of my top 5 favorite cards in Wave 1. Got to talk about this for a second. So along with another tough armor that we're going to be talking about way down the line on this video, Body Armor was insane. So it's a orange battle icon. You can only put on melee characters, but it gives that character tough 3. Having this on Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend was insane. One thing you had to make sure though is make sure when he's in alt mode that you put the body armor on him first. If you're in a tournament, you can't blame your opponent if you were to flip your Battlefield Legend first, then try to play the body armor, and your opponent calls you out on it and be like, hey, he's ranged now. It's like, oh man, you use your flip for the turn. But otherwise, in most situations, just make sure that you remember in the first place and you won't have to worry about. But having tough 3 was insane because we didn't have cards like skipping ahead again, bashing shield and things like that at the time. But we did have a couple of things to get rid of body armor. But if you could get the body armor to stick, body armor would win you the game because tough 3 was just insane. You'd have your orange had their bold and things like that, but tough 3 was just a lot to be able to get through with all your with your defense that Prime already did have. Prime definitely used this card the best. Keep in mind being that he's melee in alt mode and ranged in bot mode. Very strong card. Combined with Flame Ward, that's tough 4, so it's just way too hard to try to get through all that. Unless you have the out, you'll most likely win the game when you have the body armor on. Easily, definitely one of my favorite battle cards from Wave 5. Now coming into Wave 1, I can't count. Now coming into Wave 5, Wave 5 has, again, this card has kind of been power crept. Tough 3 is still was good, but tough isn't as relevant as it is now. Speaking in today's metagame, again talking about Wave 5 with all the Pierce out there. But I do have another video that I plan on making that will be talking about the tough cards and how blue actually isn't dead. But more on that in another video. Tough is just in a very interesting spot, but I will just say this, and I've said this on multiple other occasions. I think you still have to allow for your blue to max out as much as you can to block your opponent's orange. And then it's based off of your opponent's black icons, how much they get through for their Pierce. So it's up to your opponent's deck build how much they get in for Pierce. Orange always had an issue of getting through damage before without the black icon. When introducing the black icon, now they at least get in for guaranteed damage. So you don't need them having 10 Pierce 4 and then you only have 4 defense, because now you're going to take 6 instead of taking just the 4. If you're at least able to block for 7 or 8, you're only taking 4. Yes, you're still taking 4 and it's like, oh, they're still getting in for guaranteed damage. Tough doesn't matter. If bold is still in, tough can't be all the way out, if that makes sense. But again, more on that in another video. Body armor, still a very good card. Could potentially see play coming up again in later formats when we get stronger melee characters, because range is definitely the strongest in the game, but we'll see. Next up, we have Bombing Run. Bombing Run was always one of those cards when I looked at it that I always wanted to work, and it just didn't work out well. Unless your opponent was playing a plethora of direct damage, you just never got full value of the card. So you move 1 damage from each of your planes to an enemy, and you could take if you had 3 planes, you take 1 damage from each of them, and pretty much essentially heal, and move all that damage to 1 character. And so 3 damage to 1 character is a lot. The problem is if your opponent's not playing cards like One Shot Stand, One Shot Fall, or Armed Hovercraft and things like that to deal all that damage to spread out that AoE damage on your characters, it wasn't that good, because you might just be able to move 1, maybe 2 with the Bombing Run, and having a card in your hand that needed to wait like that specifically just wasn't strong enough. And that even is more so now, despite direct damage actually being kind of insane. Playing decks still are having some trouble getting off the ground in terms of competitive play, and casual play is definitely still strong. Again, with direct damage being everywhere, Bombing Run is actually a nice counter that planes are able to use to be able to move damage from their character, and that's what they're all about anyway. Between Windsweeper and Slipstream, moving that damage onto your opponent's characters is definitely very valuable. So Brainstorm. Brainstorm is one of the cards that allowed me to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I say that because the cards that play an action and play another action. Coming to this game from a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! You're able to activate cards that are similar to actions called spells, and you're able to activate as many spells as your hand will allow in a turn. And in this game, getting used to that was tough in the beginning, coming from Yu-Gi-Oh. But Brainstorm allowed me to play Yu-Gi-Oh in a sense. But then at the same time, the problem with Brainstorm is that it put a lot of pressure on your hand. Being that you're able to only play one action or upgrade per turn, first of all, you only start with 4 cards in your hand. And if you go first, you'll have 4, then you'll draw to 5. But even then, your action plays would have to be very savage in order to have some good efficient value out of the card. Now, a deck like Optimus Prime, or a deck with Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, could use it because he's able to get an action back from your scrap pile. So that doesn't put as much pressure because it's a +1 from your scrap pile. And then you can play that Brainstorm to potentially play 2 cards. Like if you need to play Leap in the battle and then also Security Checkpoint. Those are 2 really good power plays in this wave that you could potentially do. So I don't really see this card being a 3 of, but it definitely could have been a 1 of in certain decks that gained advantage through the characters besides putting pressure on your hand. In today's metagame, this card is actually still very good. There are certain decks that play it. Decks like Perceptor. Perceptor could play this card very well because he's able to dig for 4 cards into your deck and potentially have a lot of cards in your hand. And having all those cards in your hand don't mean a lot when you can only play 1 of each per turn, action and upgrade. But Brainstorm allowing you to play extra actions lets you get a lot more value out of the Perceptor's usage for his alt mode and go from there. Same with Shockwave and some other decks that are able to just draw cards and get a lot of advantage naturally to be able to play more efficient plays throughout every turn. So Brainstorm actually to this day in Wave 5 is still very solid. Next up, we have our first Insecticon card. On to the next one. Nah, I'm joking, but Bug Bomb. Now, this card I think is actually pretty good, but unfortunately, the Insecticons are on a different level in terms of power and what they want to do. And in this wave, they were not able to be. Well, you could play in blue, but it would just be very weak. This deck is definitely notorious and infamous for being orange. And yeah, so Bug Bomb is a utility put on Insecticons only. And when upgraded characters KO, you draw a card, scrap an enemy upgrade, and your opponent chooses a card from their hand and scraps it. Now, having your opponent scrap a card from their hand isn't as good because hand size, or having a whole bunch of cards in your hand doesn't really do a ton. But at the same time, you get good value for what the card does. Now, it's just, in short, once again, the card's blue, and if it was orange, it definitely would have been a lot better. But because the card is blue, it wasn't able to be played on the axis that the 4 wide notorious heavy orange deck wanted to play, and it just wasn't any space for it. Now in today's metagame, I could not see this still in competitive play. I could see orange black bugs being a thing, but not blue bugs. And if blue bugs get better and get more cards over time and get better characters or just better battle cards in general, I can potentially see this card being a thing. Venom, this card is really good with Venom. So I feel like with the Venom, he's 9 stars. So you still want to play him in a 4 wide deck, and you can only play 3 Insecticons comfortably, and then you'll have to play a 5 or a other 5 job like Night Racer or whatever. But yeah, still a very cool card. Like I said, in terms of casual play, definitely could be an annoying card for your opponent to deal with. Utilities are always very hard to get rid of, so the one I value the most out of this is being able to scrap an enemy utility, or enemy upgrade. So you're able to scrap anything from them. So that is kind of relevant for today's metagame, like I said, in casual play. Next up, we have Cargo Trailer. Cargo Trailer is a card that has been, I don't want to say hyped up, that's the wrong choice of words, but it's been a card that not everybody, I hate fabricating that saying everybody. Who's everybody? When you say they, who's they? People need, okay, whatever. Cargo Trailer. It's so hard to get all 3 Cargo Trailers on. You have cards like Treasure Hunt, you had Inspiring Leadership, etc. But it's just very hard and Christmas landish, as the term has been in this community, to try and get 3 Cargo Trailers on. So it's just not worth it, even though you can get upwards of +9 on your Optimus. It's just not as good as just, I guess the utility slot wasn't as well off, but there are a couple others we'll be talking about later on. Now, in today's metagame, this card would actually be easier to get on with combos like Metal Detector Reclaim. You can, Metal Detector on one of your characters, reclaim a Cargo Trailer on top of your deck, attack, trigger the Metal Detector, look at the top card of its upgrade, you may play it. Still takes way too much time to get the Cargo Trailers on. Now, in the event that we get some type of combo deck or some type of truck or something, battle card that allows you to play this card, if you have 3 of the same upgrade in your scrap pile, you may add them to your hand and play one of those or something like that. Or something, I don't know. So somehow you can get accumulate 2 or so cargo trailers from your scrap pile and then play all 3 in a turn or something to that effect, then that card could definitely potentially be better, because having +9 out of nowhere with having this card be able to fit in one slot can definitely just out of nowhere do some serious damage. So we definitely need some more combo-y, free power crept type battle cards or characters to be able to allow this card to accumulate easier, but otherwise just more of a casual card. Collateral Damage. Really don't know much about this card, so let's read it. Each player chooses a weapon on one of their characters and scraps it. Each player chooses a card in their hand and scraps it. So, okay, now I remember this card. This card was good with Shockwave, the first Shockwave, and it's very situational. This is kind of like reminds me of Battle Ready. Battle Ready, how it takes a while for you to finally meet the conditions to want to get value out of the card. And even then, so you both have to lose a weapon, and then we both have to lose a card out of our hands. Not as good as, yeah, it's just not good. It's more of a casual card. It's more of a kamikaze card. We're both just kind of scrapping our weapons from each other. I guess you can still play this technically, and you don't have to have a weapon, if I'm reading this correctly. So you can just wait and see if your opponent has a weapon, and then scrap theirs, and then... Or maybe you have to. I don't know if you have to meet the requirement or not. Somebody comment down below and let me know the ruling on Collateral Damage. But otherwise, not a very good card. There's better cards, definitely, even in this set, in terms of disruption and, yeah. In terms of competitive play, definitely more of just a casual card if you just want to mess with your opponent and try to get use out of some of the lesser played battle cards. Combat Training was an interesting card. So it is a utility that gave Bold 1 to the character while I had a weapon, and gave Tough 1 to a character while I had an armor, and it's a white battle icon. So this card would have been cool, definitely in Metroplex, because he wanted the Bold. This card was solid in, well, that was it. It was just really good in potentially Metroplex. I could see it being played in a mixed deck in Wave 1, but I don't think anybody was on mixed decks in Wave 1. The 3-Wide Optimus deck had spots of orange, but it was still heavy blue. And Secticons, the only off-color card they played were 3 one-shot stand and 3 eyes still function. So, yeah, there really wasn't other room besides Metroplex for to play this card. But Metroplex uses this very well because it's a white battle icon, and it gives you an additional bold on top of all the other benefits you get from your characters being out. In today's meta game, this card is kind of power crept by other utilities, but it can still randomly have some usage in like Autobot Mirage decks or anything like that for casual. But in terms of competitive, probably just gets power crept by other cards. But next up, we have Computer Sabotage. This is an orange battle icon that I actually forgot about. Your opponent chooses 3 cards from their hand and scraps the rest. So if they have a 7-card hand, they get to keep 3 of those cards. They have to scrap 4. I can see this card being good against the combo deck. So like the Springer combo deck or the Preceptor combo deck, those decks, when you finally get a turn, you are able to have them go from 10 cards in their hand, ready to combo off on you again next turn, and hopefully defeat you with Daring Escape, and then play Computer Sabotage, and then make them only keep 3 of those cards. So otherwise, I wouldn't even play this against a regular Preceptor deck. I wouldn't side deck this card against them. There are other cards that we'll talk about when we get into Wave 2 and so on that you could play. But that's definitely very interesting because you know what? It is on color. So if we get more decks in the future, speaking for the format it was in, it wasn't worth it because there weren't decks that got a crazy hand size where taking them down to 3 really did all that much. But like I said, against a combo or anything like that in Wave 5 potentially. And as we get more waves, I'm sure we're going to get more and more decks that get a lot of advantage and have a whole bunch of cards in their hand and potentially be able to play a lot of cards too. So Computer Sabotage, I could definitely see having some potential play in the future in a side deck. Next up, we have Crushing Size. Crushing Size is one of my favorite cards right now, kind of going back and forth. But Wave 4, I remember we played this card a lot in the Galaxy Prime deck. Galaxy Prime loved this card because it was an upgrade, utility. He needs 3 utility slots, perfect. And it's a white battle icon to help extend your flips to hopefully hit that orange-blue for Galaxy. Wave 5, it's a little worse. Not a lot of decks want to use it, but Galaxy Prime still uses it well. And being at the utility slot's still hard to get rid of. You really don't care about the Pierce 1, but the Pierce 1 can be relevant every now and then. And worst case scenario, if your opponent doesn't have an upgrade or a utility out, you just draw a card. So it's still nice, and again, you still get the Pierce 1. So this card, I don't remember seeing a lot of play in Wave 1, but it could potentially be a side deck card if there were, utilities that were annoying to, like Debilitating Crystal, which we'll be getting to here soon. Yeah. So I can definitely see this card having some solid play in side decks and certain decks. It's going to be rare, but a Galaxy Prime definitely I can easily see playing 1 to 2 of these between the main and the side deck. Crushing Treads is a really cool utility. It's a card that you can only put on tanks, utility, orange battle icon, and it has Pierce equal to its defense. So Megatron, the first Megatron that comes to mind, well, he has like Pierce 3 in his bot mode. He has 2 health, or he has 2 health. 2, damn, Megatron, you weak. 2 defense, so he'll have Pierce 2 plus the Pierce 3 he gets, so he'll be like 5 Pierce or 4 Pierce 4, and then with orange flips, it'll be more than that. So this was our first taste of really trying to get to high Pierce numbers with Megatron, but unfortunately that Megatron, even Living Weapon, really didn't care for this card. You know, speaking into this format, I could see Demolisher using it because he'll have Pierce 4. I could see, you know, we have stronger armors these days that give +3 defense, like composite armor. So like hunker down is a really strong play. So you can go hunker down, flip all your tanks to from bot mode to tank mode, get an armor from your scrap pile. So let's say we get a composite armor. So composite armor on Demolisher will be 7 defense. So first of all, he's going to be flipping 7 cards for his effect. You put a Crushing Treads on him, he'll have Pierce 7. So the only thing you'll have to, well, he does that. He has 1 attack from the composite armor. So the only thing you have to worry about at that point is to hopefully scale up enough oranges to match that Pierce. Because remember, you can't have more Pierce than your attack. So if I have 6 attack, but I have Pierce 10, I'm only doing 6 Pierce 6. I can't have more Pierce than my attack, if that makes sense for new players. So Crushing Treads is definitely a card I can see being a side deck card in dedicated tank decks versus control decks. Orange doesn't really care about the Pierce because whatever your attack value is, you're going to be getting in for that damage anyway. So me having 6 Pierce 4 versus an orange deck's 1 defense, they're going to take 5, and like the Pierce just doesn't matter. It's just not it's not useful against other aggro matchups. Next up, we have Cybertronian Beau. This is another one I have to pick my phone up and read because I forgot what it does. It is a rare from a Wave 1, and it's a blue battle icon weapon. While the upgraded character attacks and you flip an equal number of orange and blues, each of those blues add to its attack total, and it gets +1 attack. Okay, so this was a literal gamble card. You were never able to guarantee that you could flip the equal number of oranges and blues. So this is one of the earlier, and actually looking at this card makes me shake my head in a good way how WTC were potentially trying to promote mixed decks since the beginning. This is actually something I only started noticing in like Wave 3, 4, and 5-ish, how they were trying to really promote mixed decks. But even as early as Wave 1, WTC was always trying to promote mixed decks because this would be better, obviously, in those kind of decks. But you just could never guarantee that you would get the orange and the blue. Even with the Focus 1 off of Area Recon, the very first battle card we showed, it's not easy to Focus 1 and like, all right, well, I'll scrap this blue. Hopefully my next 2 cards is the orange-blue. I guess with Rollout and a Matrix of Leadership, those are the only 2 examples where, well, no, because even then, like you flip 1 Rollout, and then if you flip an orange, that's not equal because you got 2 oranges and 1 blue. So it's just very hard to try to do. Now, in today's format, there are a lot of cards that give focus. So if you can get upwards to at least focus 2, like with Raider Sights, you can put Raider Sights as a upgrade on your character. You could potentially get what you want out of it. But at the same time, it's a blue weapon that gives +1. There's just better weapons out there to just get you to, like Energon Axe. Energon Axe is another card we'll be talking about soon. It's probably one of the best weapons in the game. Not probably, it is. So yeah, just not worth it. For casual play, to have that gamble type effect would be cool and fun to see if you could pull it off. Next up, we have Databank. So this is one of our first true continuous draw power cards. It's a white battle icon that has it's a utility, and it gives no attack and defense, but at the start of each of your turns, draw a card. So you'll be drawing 2 cards per turn, and what that does is just give you more options in your hand. So if you are playing a deck that is playing Brainstorm or anything like that, your Brainstorm doesn't put as much pressure on your hand because you're drawing an additional card every turn. And if your opponent's not playing Crushing Size or another upgraded removal that we'll be talking about later on, this card was actually pretty solid to be able to run you through your deck and have you have more options in your hand to be able to fight through whatever scenario. In today's metagame, there's simply a better card in Pocket Processor that's a green, and yeah, it is just a green, and it doesn't help towards combat flips or anything, but the white can actually not necessarily be great for you either. Yes, it does give you an extended 2 flips, but the card's just simply been power crept because what it is, the difference between a solo white and a solo green is that you can get the green from battle every time you see it, or every time you see it upon battle, and the white battle icon, you could just flip it, you know, every time during battle and literally never draw the card in your hand for the game. Right after Datapad or Databank, we have Datapad. Datapad was a really cool card. Scott taught me the put this card on Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, so this was really cool. So you play this on him. Let's say you may have played it on him like a turn, like 2 turns prior before he's attacking. Set him up with the Datapad. Then on his turn he's attacking, play Ion Blaster Optimus Prime, and then play a weapon, play an action, and then you'll attack with Prime. You'll draw a card, and then you can stack a card on top of your deck from your hand. And that was dope because you were able to play an additional action, because remember Optimus Prime Battlefield Legends effect was whenever you flip an action on top of your deck, you may play one of those actions. So you can even do a play where, like, let's say I'm going one of the best plays you can do, or one of the best plays I could think of, is play Ion Blaster, leap into battle for the turn, attack with Prime, draw a card, stack a second leap into battle that you had in your hand, put that leap into battle on him. I think, now that I think about that, that's the same play that Scott, I think, was talking about, where he had, or maybe it was like one shot stand or something like that from the comp camp. Shout out to the comp camp. Definitely go check out that video with Scott, and I also have one with Kai. But anyway, yeah, so being at 10 and then 2 leap into battles puts you at 16, somebody's definitely probably getting KO'd. So just the utility that Datapad gives with that character is very nice. This card is also very good in aggressive decks too, because you can draw a card and stack those dead improvised shields and Piece of Tyranny on top of your deck. Piece of Tyranny was still a very strong card to be able to use if you knew how to use it correctly, but especially with improvised shield, outside of another battle card that we'll be talking about later, it was very hard to get that improvised shield out of your hand because we're in wave 1 and we didn't have the green icon yet. Now, speaking for wave 5 and what it could currently be, I don't see this card being very good in many decks, maybe like the all-white Mirage deck, but again, it's just been power crafted by better cards that draw you cards, but it still has some decent utility in decks that are playing those, double oranges and things like that. You want to stack those on top of your deck if you're not getting used out of playing them. Next up, we have Debilitating Crystal. Debilitating Crystal is a utility. Remember, utility is the hardest upgrade to get rid of in the game. And being added to utility, it got rid of that good old body armor that you have on your Prime, feeling really good. And when you got a kickback playing a Debilitating Crystal and supercharge, and then they're flipping a whole bunch of cards, and then they bounce your body armor, that's a bad day for you, because you're going to probably be taking a lot of damage. And definitely a very, very solid card. In today's metagame, again, it's been power crafted, but at the same time, it is a utility that can get rid of any upgrade. So being able to bounce back any upgrade in your opponent's character is definitely potentially very solid still. So like cards like Jetfire, wave 1 Jetfire, I can use that card very well. Just flip and grab that from your scrap pile. I can see it being a one-of in certain decks. It hasn't been seen any play lately, but I know one thing I've been doing is going back from wave 1 through 4 and looking for older battle cards that I haven't been playing that can potentially be played in the new metagame. So definitely not a bad card. It just needs its spot in certain decks where it can be played definitely in the future. Next up, we have Dino Chomp, finally into the Dinobot cards. So definitely the most powerful Dinobot card we have. It's a blue battle icon to offset its power. If you were ever wondering, it's like, man, why do I have this all orange deck and then they give me Dino Chomp, which gives me bold 5, but it's a blue battle icon, not orange. It's just to offset the power level, because if every card that had something specific for a trait specific was the color that you wanted it to be, or that it should be, the game would be kind of dull. And maybe if they did make it orange, I don't know if we would have ever thought about it, like, man, nah, Dino Chomp specifically should have been blue. But that's what it does. It just offsets the power level a little bit, because having an entire orange deck with the Dino Chomp also being orange just makes Dinobots like wreck a lot better than they did at the time. Now, when I say a lot better than they did, unfortunately, it did fall to what was I trying to say? It did fall to 3-wide Prime, and it did fall to the Insecticons, especially Insecticons, because they were 4-wide. And simply put, them being 4-wide plus I Still Function gave them more attacks than the Dinobots. And yes, the Grimlock offset that a little bit, because if you were able to get a big enough swing with Grimlock will kill that character and kill another character. But one of the problems Grimlock always had was with his effect, is the fact that your opponent gets to choose where the damage goes. So if you attack a character and you overkill it by 10, and they have another character that only has 2 health left, that whole 10 goes onto that character and they just die. Now, I think on 2 different instances, obviously Grimlock would have been better if you were able to choose where the damage goes, which would have been insane, but choose where the damage goes, which I think it honestly should have been, or like the rollover damage. Let's say that same example I said in the beginning. If you attack for 15 into their character and they have 3 defense, let's say they're taking 10 rollover. The 10 rollover rolls into the next character that only has 2 health left. Well, that 2 health left, 10 minus 2 is 8. That other 8, they still got to roll over into another character. So this picture like Grimlock doing like one crazy swing on all of your opponent's characters potentially. I think that would have made him a lot better, a lot more viable. But unfortunately, he was him and the Dinobots were only able to be played 3 wide, so they naturally just always lost out to Insecticons. And again, if I didn't say it before, even with just 1 eye still function, they had 5 attacks to your 3. And if the Grimlock was killing, you know, one of your bots and then barely just missed one of your other bots, but they still had 3 characters in the ISF. It was just too much for Dinobots to deal with. Now, Dinobots also could use that card as well, but I'm digressing, and we'll get into that when the cards come up. But on to Dino Chomp in Wave 5. I can see it potentially still being a thing, but we still have a lot of more crazier cards these days. Like, I can just, first thing that comes to my mind when I think about Dino Chomp is in hostilities. You may get in a situation where your opponent sets in hostilities to turn that Grimlock's attacks, and that in hostilities just wrecks Grimlock's day. So you play Dino Chomp and scrap your hand, and then you attack with Bold 5, but you run into in hostilities against a blue deck. You're just not having a good day. And against an orange deck, again, now we have Titan Masters. If they have a head, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna beat the head down, but then they go like hit one of the other characters. Like the health pools are so much higher these days. There's just so many things that are issues with that, unfortunately. But hey, who knows? Maybe we'll get a stratagem for Grimlock, and it'll simply say you get to choose where the damage goes, and that actually might change something. So I don't know. We'll see. Next up, we have Disarm. Disarm is a really good card that was stronger, kind of skipping ahead, stronger in Wave 3 and 4, and fell off in Wave 5 a bit. So talking about its future viability, I can see it definitely be a 1 or 2 of in certain control decks, side decks, and again, it just gets rid of all upgrades, which is very strong. So that pesky utility slot that we can't get to very easily. Now, speaking in Wave 1, I didn't see this card having much play. In hindsight, I wish I did play this card, because when it was those 3-wide prime mirror matches and they have an Energon Axe and a body armor, or, you know, almost said reflex circuits, or a reinforced plating on their character, having this card that is bounce, you know, both of their upgrades and set them back 2 turns is very strong. Why 2 turns? Because they can only play 1 upgrade per turn. So it took them 2 turns to play those upgrades, and it took me 1 turn to bounce all of their upgrades back. So they slowly but surely have to put those upgrades back on to set back up. Next up, we have Disruption. Disruption is an orange battle icon. Look at your opponent's hand and scrap an action from it. So this card is cool. I think in certain orange decks, I think looking back in hindsight, if I had room for it in certain orange decks, I would have played this card, because we did too much. I did too much, excuse me. I don't say we and fabricate again, because I can't stand when people do that. I underestimated interruption on my opponent's side. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it didn't, but you know what? If my opponent had a grenade, every time my opponent potentially had a grenade launcher or a flamethrower in their hand, for me playing Disruption would have been good. And it's also a card that's on color. So most of Wave 1, I know I did well, except for when I played 3-wide prime, because you were obviously able to control with, you know, security checkpoint, etc. But most of Wave 1, I just kind of just brute force. I do my turn, you do your turn. We don't interact with each other except for my defense versus your attack, etc. Now, this card nowadays, you could probably play in a really annoying casual deck. There's so much disruption nowadays. You could have like every single one of your actions be disruption and take cards from your opponent. Shockwave kind of just does that better. And even then, sometimes I've taken cards from my opponent and left them with no cards, and they still end up winning because they can just top deck well every turn. So hand disruption is not all it's cracked up to be, so I wouldn't focus on full hand disruption. But again, it is on the color. So if you're playing an aggressive deck, you can potentially play this card to be able to, when you draw it, play it, get rid of an opponent's upgrade. Next up, we have another disruption card, Disruptive Entrance. This is literally the opposite of Disruption. It's a blue battle icon, and look at your opponent's hand and scrap an action. So this card, I remember, was very good in the Optimus Prime deck. You can grab this card back, and you can take Peace to Tyranny out of your opponent's hand. You can take Grenade, or not Grenade Launcher. You can take Peace to Tyranny out of their hand. You take Supercharge, whatever they had in their hand at the time, their own security checkpoint in the mirror match. Peace to Tyranny, I remember, was a really good one. One of the things that was a downside for me with this card was when I just smelled an I Still Function or a one-shot stand in my opponent's hand, especially I Still Function. On the turn, my Prime would attack. A lot of times, if I had too many upgrades in my hand and I couldn't checkpoint them, but I really wanted to get their ISF out their hand, I would flip Prime back to alt mode, grab Disruptive Entrance, and use it to scrap their one-shot stand or their I Still Function or whatever to make their next turn not so brutal. Now, in today's metagame, I could definitely see this potentially being a one-of in certain decks, but then at the same time, again, we do have better battle cards that take cards from your opponent's hand, like Espionage is a white-green battle icon. that you were able to grab off of your battles. So if you were playing a disruption deck, you could play 3 espionage, 3 counter espionage, 3 disruptive entrance, 3 disruption. Again, that's probably overdoing it, but it could potentially be pretty cool and annoying for your opponent to deal with. But next up, we have Drill Arms. Very good card. Definitely a card I played in the 3-wide prime deck. It's a card that gets rid of armor, and not really having that many ways to get rid of armors, this card was definitely very solid. And if your opponent didn't have an armor, you were able to draw a card, and it was blue, so it helped you on defense, and it did at least give you +1 and able to draw a card. So there was so much benefit to this card. So +1 attack and draw a card, or +1 attack and get rid of an opponent's armor. Very, very solid card. Definitely one of my other favorite cards from Wave 1. Today's metagame, it's been Power Crypt. Simple as that. Next up, we have Emergency Maintenance. It says, repair 1 damage from one of your characters. If you have more stars of characters in your KO area than on the battlefield, repair 2 damage from that character. So again, it's a card that's on color. The problem with it, I think, off the top of my head, is so in an aggressive deck, your guy is so fragile no matter what, and healing 1 or potentially 2 or 3 or how many ever from your character is just not viable. And in a blue deck, you could probably offset and probably maybe play 1 or 2 of these, but it still probably wasn't worth it because it was situational, and you had to have more stars of characters in your scrap pile than your opponent. So ideally, you probably would want it in an aggressive deck because your characters are fragile and they die easier, but just probably not worth it. And these day and age, I know there's one deck that played it. Was it Sentinels? Either Sentinels was able to play it, or the Grimlock from Wave 2. The Grimlock that was able to accumulate, characters in the KO pile. You could potentially use it there. Energon Axe. Energon Axe is probably still the best blue weapon in the game. This card is great. Has to have damage on the character. A damage that you can only play this on the character that has damage on it. Then you play it, gets +3 attack and Pierce 2. So Pierce 2, of course, you're getting in for at least guaranteed 2. Very strong card. It was easily activatable by one-shot stand, one-shot fall, which is my favorite card in the game. My favorite action card in the game. And deal 3 damage to one of your guys, deal 3 damage to one of their guys. Play the Energon Axe. It's such a crazy power play. Put that on Optimus Prime, feeling good. Today's metagame, this card is still just as strong. This card is an easy 2 of, maybe even 3 of in certain blue decks that I play, and it's even easier activatable these days. Cards like Scouting Mission, deal 1 to one of your characters, or excuse me, deal 1 to a character on the battlefield, and then the owner draws 2. So you can easily chip your character for 1, draw 2, play Energon Axe, go to town. Camion Crash, deal 1 to one of your characters, deal 2 to an enemy, play Energon Axe. Definitely a very strong play. Magnetic Dysfunction Ray or Precision Fire. You can deal AoE damage to everybody, and then one of your characters that took 1 also, you can play Energon Axe. So definitely a lot of value in Energon Axe. Still to this day, the best blue weapon in the game. Next up, we have Equipment Enthusiast. Equipment Enthusiast was a card that combo decks play more often than not. I don't see this card potentially having that well of play in Wave 1, but in the event that you did play this card, it was better draw than backup playing because you didn't have to scrap your hand. So it's a mid to late game card. You probably were happy with 2 draws, maybe even 3 draws, but as long as you had 2 or so upgrades on the character, you can draw a whole bunch of cards. Now, because we didn't have any green upgrades at the time, that makes Equipment Enthusiast a little worse, but at the same time, there were certain cards that we're going to get to later where you can specifically play 1 and play another upgrade and then draw a couple of cards. But that's also your action upgrade per turn, so is that good? I don't know. But now today's metagame, this card is actually still seen as a 1 and 2 of in the Galaxy Prime decks because of how Galaxy Prime operates. You're able to play battle cards off of your flips. I think the Titan Master Brainstorm can play a battle card off flips, so he can use it as well because you can get upgrades on your characters a lot quicker and more than 1 in a turn, so you can get more value out of the Equipment Enthusiast. And of course, the Dare and Escape deck, Dare and Escape uses this card very well at 3 because they can play cards like extra padding and have 3 extra paddings in 1 armor slot, and then have a whole bunch of other upgrades, multi-tool, etc., and draw a whole slew of cards. And that's where Brainstorm's really good, going back to Brainstorm. So you play Brainstorm, have 5 upgrades out, including 3 extra padding. Play Equipment Enthusiast, draw 5 cards, and then you're still able to play another action. So if you have another Brainstorm in your hand, for your second action, you can play another Brainstorm, and then go off with a slew of other cards in your hand, and have all these cards, and it just can get ridiculous. So definitely one of the stronger draw cards in the game. Next up, we have Flamethrower. This is one of your stock base Bold 2 orange battle icon cards. It was definitely strong for what it was worth at the time to be able to get in with your already hard hitters like Grimlock or your any of your well, not any of your Insecticons, but well, yeah, all of your Insecticons would love this card. Kickback and Barrage obviously love this card the most. Definitely one of the strongest cards in the game, or in Wave 1. And nowadays, the card has simply been power crept. We have better battle cards not worth playing. But at the same time, if you have, depending on what your deck is slanted as, it's not the worst. It's not going to lose you a game because you play it, but there are better options. And next up, we have Force Field. Force Field was another card that's actually very annoying to deal with. Because we didn't have the notorious Bashing Shield that had the orange-green battle icon that was able to get rid of this card, Force Field is actually really cool because if your opponent didn't have Drill Arms or Ramming Speed to get rid of it, or whatever, Disarm, etc., this card was actually very good to be able to block against the high attack value that Barrage and Kickback could get, or against any other deck, or whatever the case is. So if your character would take 4 or more battle damage, you attach that card and scrap it, and you can only take 4 damage. So definitely meticulous how you have to play this card, but this card was definitely one of the stronger defensive cards in Wave 1. Nowadays, this card is very good in specific decks like Blaster, because Blaster has one of the mini cassettes, Ramhorn, where when he defends, you can play a white armor, and you don't have to play the white armor on him. So if he's already going to die and 4 would kill him anyway, you can actually play that white armor anywhere. And what that does is it's kind of like this, not kind of, it lets you play an upgrade on your opponent's turn, which is really cool. And you know, so they do have Bashing Shields, not as great because you didn't have to waste your play on the Force Field, but still a decent card in certain matchups overall. Definitely still sees play today. Next up, we have Fusion Cannon and Megatron. The one thing that I always had an issue with this card, gets Pierce 3, that's cool. Add that to the original Megatron that had like Pierce 3 or whatever. He gets a lot of Pierce, which is cool. I wish it gave +1/+1, or I wish it gave the opposite of Ion Blaster of Optimus Prime. I know that's probably asking for a lot, but Megatron's always seen the short end of the stick. Now, speaking of that, Megatron Living Weapon. I heard WOTC say in the podcast that he's actually on par with Battlefield Legend. WTC, I don't think any of us are going to figure it out. I would love to see where your guys' brain is at, how y'all think that Living Weapon Megatron can be on par or better than Optimus. Now, on the surface, it's obvious. Put a grenade launcher on him, he can hold 2 other weapons in his utility and armor slot. So you can put Flamethrower in the utility slot and Energon Axe. Yes, he's going to have more attack value than Prime, but the problem is how long it takes to be able to set that up. And if it's even really worth setting that up like that. Now, granted, yes, he does have his flip where you can flip him and grab a weapon from alt mode, but just in general, they said he's on par or better than Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend. And none of us just ever saw it. I'm pretty sure a lot of us tried it, you know, with Hunker Down especially, because Hunker Down, you get a lot of value out of that card. But I'm curious to see the deck that they're talking about where he could have been better than Prime, because I don't think I'm going to figure it out. I can make the most obvious bluish tank deck that plays Hunker Down and grenade launchers, etc. But I don't even know that's necessarily good enough against Prime. But hey, we'll see. But the Fusion Cannon and Megatron, there's better cards in it now. Like we have, well, kind of, sort of. There's better cards in Energon Axe, first of all, and Laser Cutlass. But Laser Cutlass, yes, it can only be put on characters that have 3 stars or 7 stars or less. But we have cards like Fusion Board today, and yeah, it's blue and its own color, but it's just not worth playing these days. Megatron has other issues that he has to worry about other than trying to get pierced. He can get pierced a lot other easier ways, and still has issues that needs to be worked on. But it is what it is. Next up, we have Grenade Launcher. One of the top 5 weapons in the game, period. Blue, orange, purple, indifferent, blank, doesn't matter. Grenade Launcher is insane. +4 attack, scraps itself after battle, it's on color, it's orange. Absolutely, imagine yourself getting shot with either a shotgun or a grenade launcher. Yeah, grenade launcher is definitely hitting you a lot harder. +4 attack's insane. It really scales up the attack on any of your characters to really break through your opponent's defenses or to guarantee killing another bot in an orange mirror. You put this on Barrage. He's at 9 bold 2. That's insane. He's hitting for some high numbers. Somebody's probably definitely getting KO'd or close to it with this card. And even in today's metagame, absolutely, whenever you're playing an orange deck, I don't care what orange deck you're playing, Grenade Launcher is one of the 3 ofs that absolutely go into your deck, 100%. Next up, we have our first double blue card that doesn't have a star, being that star started in Wave 2, Handheld Blaster. So Handheld Blaster is one of the cornerstone cards to build in a blue deck when you play this alongside Security Checkpoint, and we'll talk about the other cards when they get there. But talking about Handheld Blaster itself, this would have been good in a mixed deck because mixed decks, you know, you flip some oranges, some blues or whatever on attack. It does give bold 1, so when you flip it on defense, that's where you really want it. But if you did draw it, you can't get rid of it because there were no greens yet. There were some other battle cards to help get rid of it, but worst case scenario, area, you could play it. And you know, there was potential. I might even like call myself playing this in a heavy orange deck back in the day, because that 1 or 2 defense that you flip in a orange deck can potentially save your character and potentially let it stand back up to attack. I would have probably explored more things like that in Wave 1, but honestly, I rode Vector Sigma coattails a lot in Wave 1. So because I started with double prime, then I started with 3-wide prime, and I just branched off from that, and then went from Origins and just went on from there. But yeah, this card is definitely one of the cornerstone cards to be able to play in the blue deck. Absolutely can't leave home without this card in your blue deck. Next up, we have Heroism. Heroism is heroism. That sounds like a drug. Heroism. Yeah. Blue battle icon, utility, any attack damage or any non-attack damage that any attack damage that one of your other characters will take, instead the upgraded character takes it. I guess maybe if you're in a situation where your character had little health left, you would play it. I didn't really see much value out of this card. I don't think it was worth playing in this format. In Wave 5, I can see some potential use for it. I saw some Sky Shadow decks play it. The Sky Shadow wants those bots to die anyway, so you can put it on one of the bots that have little to no health anyway, and then when they attack the other Sky Shadow piece, the other Sky Shadow piece that has Heroism will take the damage and be KO'd, and then your Sky Shadow comes out with a healthy 10 attack, 10 health. Other than that, I really don't see much use for this card, but I can definitely see a card like this being annoying in the future, so we definitely have to keep an eye out on this card. Next up, we have Hunker Down. Hunker Down is also one of my favorite battle cards from Wave 1. This card was definitely one of the cards you must include in your tank deck in Wave 1. I don't think you were able to play 3-wide tanks, but I know Demolisher and Megatron made up 2 of those tanks, and you were able to get a lot of value, because Hunker Down was a card where you flip all your characters from bot to alt mode, and then you trigger your alt mode effects, and you also get the armors from your scrap pile on the Hunker Down. If you can get the best value, like flip Demolisher and Megatron living weapon face down, this is not Yu-Gi-Oh! Flip them to alt mode, grab 2 armors to put on Demolisher and Megatron, and then also grab a weapon with Megatron, draw 1 card for every other tank you have with Demolisher. You get so much value out of that, and you're so far ahead, and you should definitely be in a very strong position to win the game. Now, in today's metagame, Hunker Down is still a very, very good card. It allows you to get composite armor, and we have so many more armors and stuff. The card's been power crept in a good way. So the card's gotten better and better every set. Every time we get more tanks, every time we get more armors, the card just definitely absolutely gets better. Can you see my face? Can you see it? Okay. I still function. Despise this card. I despise this card because I was a control player at heart, so I didn't play a lot of orange. I did build the Insecticon deck from a girlfriend to play and destroy me with multiple times, especially with this card. ISF. Yeah, it was the best, obviously, in the Insecticon deck. Not a lot more to say about this card. Monster Reborn for you old school Yu-Gi-Oh players. Bring this card back, attack with it, get rid of it again. You get an extra attack out of it. If you're playing a 3-wide aggro deck, you're in trouble, because I still function as a thing. If they're playing the Insecticons, like I said, the Insecticons use this card better than any other. Absolutely one of the best cards in the game. In today's metagame, actually not as good. There are some weird and cool combos you can do with this card, like Triptychon, or with, I guess we also have Involuntary Promotion. There are characters like Quake. When characters KO'd, everybody takes 1. So there's some special uses for this card. Not as good as it used to be, but definitely a still potentially strong card. And the card is so strong, I absolutely guarantee it will be back at 3 in some capacity in the future. And next up, we have Improvised Shield. So Improvised Shield is going to introduce our first double orange battle icon. Battle card, excuse me, from Wave 1. It is a double orange, and it does the opposite of Handheld Blaster. Being Bold 1, Improvised Shield gives you Tough 1. So again, I can see myself in a blue deck playing potentially 2 or 3 of these, and I don't know if it would have been worth it, but it's something that I would have tried if I had my own mind, because like I said, I did a lot of just whatever the Vector Sigma guys were playing. I would take that and I would tweak those decks, because I wasn't a good deck builder at that time. So I'm still not a good deck builder. What am I saying? But when I didn't know exactly what I was doing, this is something that I wouldn't have tried, but I would have tried, like, you know, later on down the line if I had more knowledge at the time. But yeah, this card is very hard to get rid of if you draw it, but otherwise there are cards like Datapad, where I was talking about Datapad earlier. Draw a card, stack it on top of your deck, and, you know, get at your opponent with that double orange you know you're going to have on top of your deck. You play this along with 3-piece to Tyranny. Can't leave home without this in your orange deck. And in today's metagame, card is still very strong. It's also still very cool. And also shout out to Handheld Blaster. We have 2 new artworks for those cards in Wave 5 type Masters Attack. So if you haven't gotten any of those yet, definitely get some of those. That's a card I actually want multiples of because I'm going to replace all my old school art improvised shields and Handheld Blasters for the new arts because it's just fresh, obviously new, and they look cool. Next up, we have Incoming Transmission. Incoming Transmission is actually the card, one of the cornerstone cards that's very easily lets you put Peace to Tyranny or the Improvised Shield back on top of your deck. And just being able to dig through your deck, you wouldn't always wait till you had a double orange in your hand, but throughout a turn where you treasure hunt and you got an Improvised Shield or 2 or whatever, this card allowed you to smooth out your draw. So you can draw and get rid of that double orange and have better cards in your hand that allow you to play the game and progress your turns. So definitely one of the better battle cards in Wave 1. In Wave 5, I don't see this card seen as much play. This did see some play in the Galaxy Prime deck from Wave 4, and I played this between this and Treasure Hunt in certain decks in Wave 5, like the Mega Quake deck. Shout out to that deck profile. Go check that out if you like Megatron. I have a new Wave 5 Megatron deck profile. So it has some small usage here and there, but for the most part, it's been power crept by other battle cards. But again, in certain decks, I will potentially be playing like 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 in certain decks. And then immediately after Incoming Transmission, we have the Cornerstone draw card for blue decks, Inspiring Leadership. This card was very solid. Being able to draw 3 cards and then discard 2 cards from your hand reminds me of the Yu-Gi-Oh card, Graceful Charity. Graceful Charity lets you draw 3 cards and discard 2 cards as well. Only difference is, of course, in this game, after that, that's your action play for the turn. You could potentially play Brainstorm, but that still puts a lot of pressure on your hand because draw 3, discard 2 is only netting 1 card, and not even actually 1 card because improvise or the Inspiring Leadership is 1 card itself. So play Inspiring Leadership, that's 1. Draw 3 cards and then discard 2. So you have the 1 card that's Inspiring Leadership itself, and then you got to discard 2 cards, but you drew 3 cards. So you're actually breaking even, but you're just smoothing out your hand as well. This is not a card that orange decks would play. Definitely blue decks would be playing this. So similar to orange decks when they had Improvised Shield in their hand and they wanted to get rid of Incoming they wanted to get rid of that Improvised Shield with Incoming Transmission, they would do the same with Inspiring Leadership, which was cool. And again, digging 3 cards into your deck reminds me of like Perceptor nowadays. Now speaking of Perceptor, he kind of power creeps this card on his own in his bot mode effect. A lot of bots have acquired effects that had old school battle card text on them. Like for example, Captain Jetfire has a treasure hunt and also actually a better treasure hunt within his effect. So now you don't have to play cards like Inspiring Leadership or Treasure Hunt in those decks respectively. Because they have that built in, and now you have more space for other cards in your battle deck. But for the time being, for what it was worth, to be able to dig for a body armor if you needed it, be able to dig through 3 cards into your deck and then get rid of the handheld blasters or whatever cards you don't need for that time was absolutely very strong. Next up, we have Ion Blaster Optimus Prime. Definitely one of my other favorite cards from Wave 1. This card was very strong and it was very simple. You can only put on Optimus Prime. It didn't matter which Optimus Prime it was as long as his name had Optimus Prime in it. And it was a blue battle icon and it gave +2 attack and +1 defense. Going back to Fusion Cannon and Megatron, this is one card where I talked about, it's like, man, that's so annoying that I guess the Fusion Cannon, it balances out because it gets Pierce 3, but at least it still at least gave 1 defense. The fact that Prime has 3 defense in truck mode, and it gets +1 defense, now he has 4 defense in truck mode. I always wanted to ask WTC, why does a truck have 3 defense and a tank only has 2? The tank should have had 4 defense. And I know that might have sounded crazy, but I think he should also have 4 defense along with Demolisher. Maybe that would have been too good, and I see why Demolisher had it also with less health and less stars. So I get where the articulation comes from and the decision points. But then when you think about it logically, it's like, why, again, does a tank have less defense than a truck? But whatever, I digress. Definitely still one of the better battle cards, especially to put on Optimus Prime. You're feeling good on Battlefield Legend. He's a 10-3 in his bot mode. 10 is an insane amount, especially in a blue deck. Especially in a blue deck where blue can hit you hard like it does. Play an action on top of his deck with the Prime, and then also defend well with his 3 defense plus the blue battle icon cards you flip, thanks to cards like Flame War, etc. Definitely a very strong card. All right, so next up we have Jaws of Steel. Jaws of Steel is a card that's obviously made for the Dinobots, put on Dinobots only, and it's an orange utility upgrade, and gives the character Bolt 2. Now, Bolt 2 is obviously great, and what's even better about it is being a utility. You can play that, and then you can also play a grenade launcher alongside it, since the grenade launcher is obviously a weapon, and get a pretty sizable attack with your Grimlock. I guess the best ideal situation you'd want, the strongest Grimlock can get in terms of the attack, is grenade launcher with a Jaws of Steel in the utility slot, and then a Dino Chomp. So he's going for, what, 10 bolt 7? You're hitting for 20 or something like that, especially with the deck being all orange. And your rollover damage is definitely, should potentially KO somebody else depending on who, you know, Grimlock's attacking. So that's the dream that you want to live with that kind of deck. But either way, it's just nice to be able to have that utility slot to give to another character. Or excuse me, to give to a character, and then also be able to hold a weapon as well to power them up even further. In terms of competitive viability or just viability in general these days, I can potentially still see this card being played, being that it's on color and it's still, again, in that utility slot, which is so illustrious and very hard to get rid of, rather. The Clobberhead and the Me Grimlock, You Grimlock on one of the smaller guys like Fangry. I can see something like that potentially being a thing. And just like, so unfortunately you're not playing Grimlock, but you're going to play Fangry and then like maybe another Dinobot or something like that to that effect. Maybe you can still play Sludge because Sludge can flip and the Fangry doesn't have to flip. And then you could play the Jaws of Steel and things like that. But of course that takes away from the main point of the deck with Grimlock. You want to get that over, you know, kill damage. So next up, we have Leap into Battle. Leap into Battle is one of the greatest blue icons in the game, one of my favorite cards. It's as simple as it gives +3 to the target character to the end of battle. Great card to use with 3Y Prime deck, great card in any blue deck to use. It's a card that I also use in current formats today, especially in Galaxy Prime. Shockwave, I'll play 1 or 2. I kind of fluctuate between once I want to play in that. Blue decks definitely can defend well, but sometimes they definitely need turns where they have burst turns where they can hit for some decent damage. Of course, since orange decks are fragile and they, you know, only have their printed defense, since they're pure orange, blue needs to be able to rise above that and sometimes, you know, turn Prime into an 11 attack or turn Megatron, a living weapon, into a 10 attack. That's before a weapon and things like that to give them some type of a nice burst turn to get rid of your opponent's characters. You can't dwindle around and just kind of defend forever. You got to be able to dish out some damage. Next up, we have Matrix of Leadership. Matrix of Leadership is a card that's been kind of getting better and better every set as we've been getting more leaders. We've gotten leaders as small as Captain Impactor from Wave 3 who can use it. But talking about it in Wave 1, it was definitely a staple card, especially against blue decks. Being an orange-blue icon, it was great to have on attack, obviously, or defense, so it's the best of both worlds no matter when you flipped it. What was also nice about it, I think Metroplex even played it, and Metroplex, the card was so good that, yes, it still gives a +1 to the character, but the Metroplex, but since the Metroplex wasn't a leader, he wasn't able to spread the +1 and pierce 1 to his other characters. But the fact that it was a non-starred blue-orange icon, it was stronger for Metroplex to be able to use and attempt to proc its effect. In terms of viability for viability for the 3Y Prime deck, I want to say I played 3 in the 3Y Prime, or 1 to 3 or something like that, but definitely included 1 in. It helped your Flame War and your Hot Rod get in for some damage, especially when it was against a blue mirror. Against orange decks, it wasn't as good, and it'd probably be a card I would potentially side out because the +1 is nice to spread, but the Pierce doesn't do anything. So there are probably other cards potentially better to play, depending on the situation. And then in terms of viability today, absolutely still one of the best cards, you know, definitely to play, especially for a Galaxy Prime. Since Galaxy Prime, again, can hold 3 utility slots, he can easily, and it also triggers his effect when you flip a Matrix off the top of your deck. You can, you know, equip it and have your 2 little guys, whether it's Brawn, Skydive, Flame War, Night Racer, whoever, be able to get in for some decent amount of damage, or at least something or whatever. And plus, with the other Pierce cards that we have nowadays, the cards just amplified and even better. We also have Cup, the new Sergeant Cup, the record leader, who's also a leader, so he can be as minimum as 8 stars because he has 7 stars, and then he has the 1 star. He can have a minimum of a 1-star head. So it's also definitely good there. So definitely a very solid card. Next up, we have Medic. There's a card we're going to talk about later that is the opposite of this effect, and it also has no icons. This was a card that, again, if I wasn't listening to the Vector Sigma podcast and understanding why certain cards were good and why certain cards weren't so good, I probably would have played myself like, oh man, Healing 2, that's great. Healing 2 is not as good as Dealing 2. You want to use your health pool and manage your health pool in terms of who you attack with on a wheel turn. And wheel turn means when every character stands back up because both sides are tapped. You want to manage your health pool in a way where you don't want to heal. You want to always progressively do something to your opponent. And until we get some type of well, we do have a deck technically now that heals and can gain off of healing, but Medic just wasn't as good as its counterpart, which we'll talk about later. There are some healing decks, like I want to say Ratchet. Ratchet does some healing. cool, but it's just not good enough yet. So if we, WTC has been pushing heal some going forward, talking about wave 5, the new Optimus Legendary Warrior, he heals, but you don't heal in 2 instances. So you only heal in 1 instance, which means you can only gain 1 additional heal off Toolbox in the Legendary Optimus deck. And then it also has no icons. There are better cards. There are cards like Team Up Tactics, which we'll be talking about later, who heals a truck, while it's in alt mode or in truck mode, and things like that. So just a potentially useful card in the future, because if dealing damage is so great, I think they're trying to push the WTC, trying to push the button little by little on heal to make it viable. And this is definitely a card to definitely keep in mind for potentially in the future if heal can get power crept in a good way. So next up we have our first ban card, and ban card, yeah, new players, ban card, multi-mission gear. Multi-mission gear, I'm gonna go all over the place with this card and try to keep it short. Banned because of the combo potential. Specialists, out of the 3 types in the game, melee, range, and specialists, specialists do some crazy things where they can play the multi-mission gear, play an additional action for their turn. So it's like Brainstorm. So you can play your action, you can play multi-mission gear, play another action, and depending on how many cards you have in your hand, you can just kind of go off and go crazy on your opponent. And speaking of going off and going crazy on your opponent, it got to a point where this card in Wave 4 was able to go off on your opponent's turn. And I forgot exactly how it goes, but once you play the multi-mission gear on your opponent's turn, I think when Cog dies, yeah, that's what it does. So when the Sergeant Cog, you send him in, the super rare from Wave 3. When he dies, you can play, you get to draw as many cards as you have characters on the battlefield, and then play an upgrade on each of those characters. So you draw how many of the cards, and then you play the multi-mission gear, and the multi-mission gear triggers on your opponent's turn because you killed the Cog, and the Cog triggered on your turn. And you play the multi-mission gear on your whatever specialist, and you can actually go off on your opponent's turn, which is kind of crazy. So it really takes your opponent to know what they're doing in order to continuously go off. But the fact that they can go off on your turn, and you're just sitting there trying to take your turn and hit a high number is kind of crazy. So that's just talking about it on a simple sense, but yeah, multi-mission gear was a very solid card. Orange icon that was armor and gave +1 defense that allowed you to progress further with your actions if you had a draw-heavy deck, especially comboed with cards like Equipment Enthusiast. Card was very solid, but is actually one of our, it's not our first ban card though, and we'll actually get to that in a little while later. And next up, we have Multi-Tool. Now, Multi-Tool is in combination with Multi-Mission Gear. Going back to cards like Equipment Enthusiast, this card was really good to play Multi-Tool on one of your specialists, activate it to play the Multi-Mission Gear, activate that to play an action. So you were able to play 2 upgrades and 2 actions. So essentially, specialists got a +1 attack, +1 defense upgrade in 2 upgrades, and then also be able to play 2 actions in that turn as well. So you could play Multi-Tool, play Multi-Mission Gear, and then trigger the Multi-Mission Gear to play the Equipment Enthusiast, draw for how many ever upgrades you have in the field, and then play your actual action for the turn. So depending on what cards you drew off of that, you could play Brainstorm, or you could do whatever, and actually just kind of go off on your opponent as well. Specialists are some of the they're definitely the 3rd best in terms of ranking in the game. We have range obviously being the best, melee, and then specialists. Specialists, as they get more, well, Multi-Mission Gear is gone now, but again, this is one of those things, if I had more time in terms of the prowess of deck building, that I may have potentially tried to build something. And who's to say it would have been good or bad? I mean, I'm trying to think what specialists were good. We had Wheeljack in alt mode, who's a specialist. Not as good there. There's a couple things going on with that whole ordeal. But Multi-Tool is definitely one of those cards that help you get more upgrades in the field. Also for Battle Ready. Battle Ready is another combo that you can do. If you had multiple Multi-Tools in your hand, you could play Multi-Tool, and then play a Mission Gear, play an action, and then you could play, let's say you did have Battle Ready. So you go Multi-Tool into another Multi-Tool, Christmas Lane here, and then play a Multi-Mission Gear, and then trigger the Multi-Mission Gear to play Battle Ready. Battle Ready will give you +3 attack, well, 1 on each character that has as many upgrades as they have, and then you would you could play another Battle Ready if you had another one in your hand, for example, and actually get some use out of Battle Ready. So that's actually an angle you could take and play, a specialist deck or whatever if they were good enough specialists to play. And in terms of today's metagame, it's not a card that's being used widely, especially since Multi-Mission Gear is gone. So its combo potential is still there with playing that into things like extra padding and then playing Equipment Enthusiast and then going off of Brainstorm. But it's not as good as it was with its brother, sister card, whatever you want to call it, in Multi-Mission Gear. Next up, we have New Designs. New Designs is a card that definitely puts a lot of pressure on your hand, similar to the similar to Brainstorm, but I also think about things where you could potentially flip Megatron Living Weapon to alt mode to grab a weapon from your scrap pile, and then since that weapon was free, that doesn't put as much pressure because that's a +1, and then you play the new designs to get 2 weapons onto Megatron, and then going with Megatron. Other than that, it didn't have much better uses. I don't even think it was used in the combo deck later on. There is one deck though, back in Wave 4, that I did tech this in at one point, but didn't really go through with it like into a tournament because I played Galaxy and Shockwave, but that's Jetfire. So since Captain Jetfire can treasure hunt and flip to alt mode and flip the top 5 cards of your deck, and among those top 5 cards, you can grab any upgrades to add them to your hand. You have so many upgrades in your hand, and obviously you only get to play 1 action or upgrade per turn. So new designs will allow you to play 2 of those upgrades and kind of get ahead and load up Jetfire even quicker because he was able to accumulate those cards. It was like a 1-of in the deck, and if I drew it and got to play it, sure. If I did, because Jetfire was still good despite you being clogged with upgrades, the deck was still very good because you just play the correct upgrade for the situation for the turn and keep it moving. And in terms of competitive viability, I guess that's pretty much the same thing with Jetfire, you know, and that's really the only other place I would see that card potentially being played. But next up, we have Nori Starscream. So this card is very strong. It's a +1 attack, and it gives you Bold 2. So with Bold 2, you always want to assume that you'll flip 2 orange icons if your deck is heavily slanted orange. It's also an orange battle icon. It's a weapon that you can only specifically put on Starscream. Or I take that back, while it's on Starscream. So you can actually put that on any character, but while it's on Starscream, he'll have Bold 2. So with the Bold 2 from the 1 Starscream back from Wave 1, that has Bold 2 in his alt mode or bot mode, as Bold 4. So he's 5 Bold 4, which is actually pretty strong and can get upwards to at least, 10-ish attack, and definitely with a supercharge or whatever from Wave 1, definitely can get some high attack. I think the issue with this card and with Plains in the end was it's fragile, very more fragile than the other decks, and this being 3 wide, you were better off playing Dinobots if you were going to play a 3 wide deck, and if you were going to play aggro at all, in the end you really were just playing bugs if you really wanted to win and get those dubs. In terms of competitive viability today, we've had a couple more Starscream since, like King Starscream and Captain Starscream from Wave 4, 3 or 4, but still not, I won't say not good enough, but there's just better options, and maybe this card is still unexplored, and maybe you can just actually go back to this card and it'd be fine, being +1 attack and then Bold 2, because it's like technically a +3, and it's just for Starscream specifically. It can get up to some pretty high numbers with it, so it's a card we'll have to see. I think a lot of us get set in our ways when it comes to building, and I know myself, I definitely get like that. So again, I've definitely been trying to dig back to Wave 1 through 4 and just play certain cards in certain decks that it's like, well, I'm just going to try it like this. I don't care what this person says or that person says. I'm just going to do it and see what happens, and I might discover something and be like, pull something back from a different wave. So see what happens. You like Krabby Patties, don't you? No, I'm joking. One shall stand, one shall fall. My favorite card in the game. Let's go. One shall stand, one shall fall is dope. Deal 3 damage to one of your characters, and then deal 3 damage to one of their characters. Yeah, Energon Axe Enabler, 3 is a lot. It made, like, when I first started the game, like, the one from Armed Hovercraft was like, eh. And then when I first saw One Shall Stand, I was like, man, I can't talk. Deal 3 damage to one of your characters, that's a lot. And yeah, okay, you get to deal 3 damage to one of their characters, but the first time that you kill a bot out of combat with One Shall Stand, when it's in that range of 3, you're gonna love the card, guaranteed. Yes, it's a blank icon, and when we talk about blank icons, we haven't really touched on it because this is like the first really good, well, I Shall Stand. I Still Function is also a very, very good blank battle icon card. Keep in mind, the reason why these cards are blank is because they're some of the most powerful cards in the game. Not necessarily all of them. Medic is not better than One Shall Stand. Medic has partial uses here and there, but One Shall Stand is just ridiculous. So if you're ever building a deck and you're wondering, oh man, I want to be on color, it's not orange, it's not blue, this and that, you have space. You have, I don't know the percentage, but I guess I could just use Bugs for an example. Bugs played 3 One Shall Stand and 3 I Still Function, and was definitely the best orange deck. So if the best orange deck can get away with playing 6 blanks, I'm pretty sure you could sacrifice playing even just 3 I Still Function or 3 One Shall Stand, One Shall Fall. Think of it like that. 100% Bugs played 6 blanks at its peak, in Wave 1. So again, these cards are just that powerful where they can't have an icon, and you have whites to facilitate to kind of help you bypass your blank. It's probably not the greatest way to think of it, but that's something that I think about when I build my decks and I have whites in the deck. The whites kind of the purpose of the white icon, I think, is to help extend your on color for what you want to be when you're attacking or defending. So orange decks, when you flip an improvised shield and a white, that white's going to facilitate helping you flip in another couple of oranges, hopefully, or it might flip a one-shot stand and another orange, but at least you like getting that one-shot stand out of circulation, because when you defend, well, I guess when you defend, one-shot stand doesn't help whether you're attacking or defending, but you get the point. The one-shot stand kind of gets filtered through the white icon, and just in general, it's a very powerful card when you draw the card, period. Next up, we have literally, unfortunately, the best card in the game, and the reason why it's the best card in the game, let me explain. It's the only card in the game that has gotten stronger every single wave. Wave 1, if you knew how to use it well, you were first, let me say, the card says may. You may KO a character with 6 stars or more and take your turn and then take an additional turn after this one. So you can play the card for no effect because it says may. So make sure you keep that in mind when you slap the card down and you play that card for your turn. But Insecticons used it very well. They had 3 targets in Ransack, Barrage, and Scrapnel. And Dinobots could use it, but they usually really didn't use it, especially because they were already 3 wide. They may potentially, use it in conjunction with I Still Function on the following turn and flip Sludge and heal your guys. And whatever other orange deck would use it. But Wave 2, card was still pretty good, still very strong. Not like as I won't say not as strong, but Wave 3 is where things really changed, because Battle Masters were introduced. And when Battle Masters are introduced, what happens when one of those characters get KO'd? They don't go to the KO pile. They turn into a weapon or utility or armor. And the ones that turn into weapons were the best ones. So usually like Fire Drive and Lionizer are the top 2 that come to mind. So having a Lionizer already get his damage in with his Bold 4 and have like 1 or 2 damage left on it because your opponent kind of tried to eat at it, every couple of turns. And then all of a sudden having your opponent piece through Tyranny the Lionizer when you're all tapped out. They get the Lionizer weapon on their character, and then they're able to attack and get Plan 1 and Bold 4 on that bot. They're swinging for a lot of damage, especially if they're a heavy orange deck, which they should be. And then they get to stand up, and then like your best character that just took all that damage, we get to stand up, and then I get to attack into your character again, which is absolutely ridiculous. So Piece of Tyranny has got very strong men. And then in Wave 4, we got more Battle Masters, and it was kind of the same thing. The card did take a back seat to blue decks though, because blue decks were really as strong as they've ever been in Wave 4, because we had the one big guy deck. Well, I guess in Wave 3 we also had Shockwave. Can't forget about the homie Shockwave. But Wave 4 we also still had the epitome of one big guy, 2 support characters. Let's get it. And Piece of Tyranny was still very strong, but it wasn't as good. I mean, we had Airstrike Patrol. Airstrike Patrol was the best orange deck from Wave 4, and it didn't use Piece of Tyranny as well as other decks because 4 of them were 5 stars or lower, so you couldn't Piece of Tyranny them. And then your centerpiece, your big guy, whether it was Barrage or Springer or General Optimus or whatever, you really wouldn't Piece of Tyranny them unless like you can guarantee it was going to be an accurate and strong play. So you knew it was going to turn out to be an accurate and strong play. And then now the card got better again in Wave 5. Wave 5 we have not Battle Masters. Wave 5 we have Titan Masters now. So when a Titan Master gets KO'd, it has a head that deploys, and the head might not seem like it does a lot, but it supplements so many things. Like it gives you another character to block before your best character attacks. Depending on what character it is, like Ominous comes out and he actually is a formidable threat himself. Just the fact that you get another body on the field, the card's just gotten even more ridiculous. A Sky Shadow has layers upon layers. Sky Shadow can be Piece through Tyranny twice. He can Piece through Tyranny the tank or the plane. You can also Piece through Tyranny the big guy because he's 14 stars, the combiner. That's crazy that you can have the potential to Piece through. Actually, yeah, you can Piece through Tyranny him twice, and then you can actually even Piece through Tyranny your other guy, whether it's Horrible or Perceptor or whatever, if the situation called for it. It's rare that you'll be doing that to your big guy, but the fact of the matter that you can do those Piece through Tyranny plays like that is just out of this world. It's ridiculous. So card is definitely the best card in the game because of those reasons. Security Checkpoint is its counterpart, and we'll be getting to that in a little bit. And you know what? I'll stop right there and we'll talk about that as we get to it. But Piece through Tyranny, definitely the strongest battle card in the game. It's undeniable because of those things I just explained. And let's get on to the next one. Next up, we have Photon Bomb. Photon Bomb is similar to One Shot Stand, One Shot Fall, but everybody's taking 2. This guy's taking 2. That guy's taking 2. I'm taking 2. This guy's taking 2. You notice I said we all taking 2. You taking 2. Everybody takes 2 damage. Simple as that. This card was definitely one of the cornerstone cards in a Plains deck that plays Slipstream, because Slipstream was able to at least move one of those damage counters over. So that card was nice, where you do 2 damage to everybody, and then every time one of your Plains attacks, Slipstream pretty much heals by moving 1 damage from the plane over to one of the opponent's characters. So this card was definitely, I think, the biggest shine this card ever got was against Area Bots. Area Bots in Wave 2, this card was insane to deal 2 damage to each of the Area Bots. So when they had all 5 on the field, remember how I talked about in the beginning of this video about with Armed Hovercraft? Yeah, my kid said, yeah, whatever he said about Armed Hovercraft. Yeah, so I think the Superion deck has 39 health total. So 39 health when you're trying to go into Firefly because he's brave. He might take some damage here. Skydive, then attack. Skydive has tough, so you're not dealing as much damage to him. By the time it gets down to the nitty gritty, Superion can actually still, by turn 5, when they combine with the Enigma, Superion can still have like easily like 15 plus health and you know, deal 3 damage to anybody, any character, and go from there. But with Photon Bomb, Photon Bomb takes 10 health total from your from Superion. So it goes from 39 down to 29 simply because you have 5 characters and every single one of them take 2. So that was definitely a side deck card that was very good against them. I knew about the card going into Origins, but I decided not to decide it anyway. Decided not to side it because I went on a grenade launcher or something. You have to go check out my deck list. I forgot exactly what it was, but I know I wanted to play Photon Bomb, but guaranteed after that tournament I added Photon Bombs in because my plan worked against Area Bots, but I also just made it a little bit more difficult unnecessarily against them. But Photon Bomb's an excellent card. It's even better with this set with Windsweeper. You can Photon Bomb the entire field, and then Windsweeper can move that damage right back. So a lot of direct damage going on, and definitely one of the strongest cards in the game, I think, as well, because that AoE damage on everything is just insane. Next up, we have Piercing Blaster. If you were playing a blue deck, I see it as potentially a 1 or 2 of. It's a card I would have played, again, if I didn't listen to the Vector Sigma podcast, but it's not a card that you need just to get Pierce 3. It was only against blue decks, so if we had side decks in Wave 1, I could see myself in a blue deck side decking 2, sincerely, like for my Flame War to have, or my, not Hot Rod, but who was it at the time? Optimus, the 7-star Optimus, potentially, and I literally would only side deck it in a blue deck versus another blue deck. Otherwise, it would never come in. It's not good enough to be main deck. It wasn't good against orange decks, so having a Pierce 3, having 7 Pierce 3 didn't mean anything when I had 2 defense. I'm going to take 5 no matter what. So that's again like well, I forgot exactly what card I talked about earlier, but it's a similar idea. So not as good, not as relevant. It's a white battle icon, cool, but now we have cards like Fusion Board, so Piercing Blaster is just way outclassed, and that's all there is to say about that. Next up, we have the card that I was talking about that is the counterpart to Medic, and we're talking about Plasma Burst. Plasma Burst is one of the other cards that was really good in Wave 1, especially in the 3Y Prime deck. So similar to how Autobots or the Insecticons played 3 one-shot stand and 3 I-Step function, the Double Prime deck, I remember that was the very first deck I ever built, played 3 one-shot stand, 1-shot fall, and 3 Plasma Burst. So you played 3 Plasma Burst, 3 one-shot stand, 3 leap into battle, and 3 the bigger they are. And the idea with that is you need to go first with the Prime deck. You're already down and out because they have 4 characters, not to mention plus their I-Step functions. You had to attack in with Prime on the first turn into Kickback. Since the entire Insecticon deck was orange, Kickback has 9 health with 1 defense. Optimus has 8 health, or excuse me, has 8 attack. So that 10 total, the 1 defense and the 9 from Kickback, is what Prime needed to get to. So even if I hit the smallest one, which is the bigger they are, I don't care about the Pierce 4. I'm just, you wouldn't get it anyway. But you get the +2 attack, which puts the Optimus at 10, and that's what you had to do on your very first turn. So you had to flip Optimus, send Optimus into Kickback. If you hit one of your 12 out of your 20 out of your 40 card deck, one of those 12 cards, excuse me, the one-shot stand, Plasma Burst, the bigger they are, and leap into battle, you KO the Kickback on the first turn, and then you actually most likely win that game. They only have 1 strong attacker after that in Barrage, and yes, Scrap will get to go in, but when they flip Scrapnel and send Scrapnel in bot mode, well, now your Flame War and your Mini Optimus or Hot Rod or whatever version you're playing can get in a free 3 damage on their Scrapnel. So that's definitely something to that was the epitome of Double Prime versus Bugs. But then the deck evolved to the 3Y Prime and 3Y, which is way better thanks to Flame War, and Bugs just couldn't hang with all the direct damage and incremental attacks that the deck was able to eat at the Bug deck. So Plasma Burst is definitely one of the better cards, you know, in the game at the set at that time. It's been a little power crept, but as soon as Wave 2 with Marksmanship, it was a blue battle icon, and as long as you have the range character, which range again is the #1 icon in the game, you were able to do 2 damage to an enemy in bot mode. Now, well, I was gonna digress about marksmanship, but we'll talk about that when we get to the Wave 2 video. By the way, again, like this video if you like this content so far. It's long, but hey, if you're at work or you're just, you know, chilling doing nothing, sit here and listen to me talk about these cards, and you get to reminisce with me and, you know, agree with me on this and that or whatever. Comment down below, by the way, if you had some ideas about the cards that you were playing, cards that I kind of, I don't want to say downplay, but cards that weren't as good to me. If they were good for you, comment and let me know your experience with those cards. Next up, we have Power Sword. Power Sword was one of those cards where it offset being a blue battle icon like Dino Chomp, but it was still a very strong card. Dinobots were able to also use this card as well, similar to how decks played 6 blank cards. Your deck also could get away with playing a couple of blue cards because they were just that strong offensively that they were good even to play in your deck. So you don't want to flip it obviously on attack, but the price is small to pay when you give it to a melee character, which is obviously which is opposite of body armor, by the way. Is both of those were very strong melee cards. Both had to be on melee characters. Body armor gives tough 3, power punch or power sword gives bold 3. So you give it to your Grimlock with a Jaws of Steel. Now he has bold 5. That's another way to go if you don't have grenade launcher. Another dream is power punch, or I keep saying power punch. We are not in Wave 2. Power sword, Jaws of Steel, and Dino Chomp was also a crazy burst turn or whatever to hit your opponent and you know, do things like that. Now, ever since I think the card also still saw some play in Wave 2, but since then it's fallen down the wayside because we have some green battle icons that also give bold. So this card was good until we started to get the green icon, because you could just flip this card a million times and never actually see it, you know, because it's not a green, unless you had a card like Treasure Hunt or whatever. Next up, we have Primary Laser. What was that? Primary Laser was a weapon that was a blue icon and +2 attack, and it simply gave +2 attack. It was a blank text box. I think it was something that you would play when you first start to learn how to play the game. Then you find out Energon-Axe is a card, and you may say, oh, well, I have to wait till my guy is damaged. It's not that hard for your guys to get damaged. Enemies were playing Zap, and you have one shot stand, one shot fall to activate it yourself. You don't have to play Energon-Axe, obviously. Feel the need to play Energon-Axe right away. You can just you know, wait till the wheel turn after all your guys have some damage, and then play a powerful card like Energon-Axe. There were just better cards and better options than Primary Laser. But at worst, if you were like on a budget and didn't want to play anything else, you had Primary Laser. Now, in terms of viability for today, we have Sharpened Talons, which is a green battle icon from Wave 5 that gives +2 attack. So it's the same thing. You do lose the blue, but the green, again, is very valuable, despite not having it to defend well with, because you can just grab it. Next up, we have one of the best upgrade removals in the game. Despite it not being a green and not being able to grab it like Reprocess and Smelt, this card is on color and was one of the only cards that you had to use, that you were able to use in Wave 1 to be able to get rid of any upgrade. So again, being that the utility slot is the hardest to get rid of, and even not just the utility slot, because we didn't have Bashing Shield yet, this card was one of the cards besides Drill Arms or Debilitating Crystal to get rid of cards like Body Armor or Force Field, you know, on the opposing team. And this card being on color was definitely a cornerstone card. I don't think Bugs ever went to play Drill Arms, although you could side 2 Drill Arms, and I think it would kill you to side a couple blues, but probably not. Between Debilitating Crystal, which was a white to help facilitate more flips, and then 2 to 3 ramming speed, this card was definitely very good to get rid of any upgrade for the time being, according to the situation. Now, this is one of those cards where I was talking about, I went back all the way from Wave 1 through 4 to see about competitive viability for any of my current strong decks. And one deck I was thinking about potentially playing one in is Perceptor, because Perceptor is a deck that can play many 1-ofs or 2-ofs because you're able to see so many cards so often. And being that it's on color, if I'm playing like my aggressive Sky Shadow deck, I actually recently teched one and ramming speed into my deck because I don't have anything, I don't like Reprocess in the deck, and I really don't like Smelt in the orange version. In the blue version, I do like Smelt. Smelt's come back a little bit. But I like the one random speed to randomly be able to get rid of my opponent's, you know, utility that gains health. We have Energy Pack, we have Enhanced Power Cell now. So yeah, it's just one. It's not like I'm playing 3 like back in the day. And because Perceptor digs so often to find it, I have some off turns where I don't really do anything special, or I have some turns where I can just use that ramming speed to sincerely get rid of something valuable to my opponent and go from there. So Next up, we have Rapid Ascent. So this is another really cool card that I may have explored more of as a one-of potentially, or in like tank decks back in Wave 1. It was an orange icon and +1 defense armor. And whenever you put it on a ranged character, your opponent chooses one card from their hand and scraps it. So this was very cool to use with tanks because you could hunker down and bring the Rapid Ascent back to your hand, or back, excuse me, onto one of your characters and make your opponent scrap a card. So, like I said, it may be like a one-of. I wouldn't focus on trying to scrap cards from my opponent's hand, but being an aggressive deck that can do something like that, or like for your turn, if you have Disruption and Rapid Ascent in your hand, you can play Rapid Ascent first, see what they discard, then play Disruption and take from your opponent again. So you being an aggressive deck also, like, so you're hitting them relatively decent, like medium attacks, and then also disrupting your opponent could have been an avenue that I might have explored back from Wave 1. Not to say it was going to be one of the best decks or anything, but if I had more knowledge of how to build decks, you'll hear me say that a lot for these videos. But I may have potentially explored that. So yeah. Next up, we have Rapid Conversion. Rapid Conversion, the first thing that comes to my mind is Grimlock. So the Dinobot deck was so flip intensive. Snarl, Sludge, and Grimlock all wanted to flip. Rapid Conversion allows you to be able to flip 2 guys in one turn. This card simply takes one character and flips it from one mode to another. So you can even do cool things like have Grimlock in bot mode and then Rapid Conversion him, flip him to alt mode, trigger his effect to give one of your Dinobots Bolt 3. And you can even give himself Bolt 3, then flip him back to bot mode, and then go in with the Bolt 3. So that was a cool play that you can do. That's pretty much like a power sword within itself, Grimlock's effect. And it was just, that's pretty much what it was there for, to be able to help flip 2 characters that you needed to flip on the same turn. Because a lot of decks did unfortunately have the issue of flip density, but flip density, that was just like the beginning of the game, and every deck had that issue. So if my deck had that issue, so did yours. So next up, we have Ready for Action. Ready for Action is a very strong card. Reminds me of Cars and all their untapping features. Untap one of your characters that has 10 stars or less. This was a card that you could potentially have used in Dinobots to kind of help leverage the playing field just a bit versus 4-wide decks like Insecticons. You could attack with Snarl in your first turn. They attack into your Snarl. Next turn, you could Ready for Action Snarl and then attack with Sludge. And then that gave you, like, it made everything even. So it gave you 4 attacks and gave your opponent 4 attacks. And outside of I Still Function, you know, them playing I Still Function, you actually can kind of manipulate and help your team out by not necessarily being wider, but equaling the playing field. There were some other decks that could potentially use it. Optimus wouldn't. Yeah, no, Optimus didn't use it because you'd have to play another 10-star character with him, so disregard that. But definitely a very powerful card. It's gotten better over the waves. I think in Wave 3 and 4 I saw some play, and even in this wave now with Perceptor, I've seen some of my homies on the squad playing Ready for Action in a certain amount of their decks with Perceptor, because again, just like ramming speed, you can find these one-ofs or spot-of cards in your throughout your deck, and then get more attacks out of your bots or whatever. So definitely a very strong card. It's something to think about for the new wave. Reinforced Plating. Reinforced Plating was one of the other strong armors out of the set, out of Wave 1. You play this alongside Body Armor. I got to a point where I think I was playing 3 Body Armor, or two Body Armor, 3 Reinforced Plating, and then I saw that Body Armor was so good, I actually ended up going to 3 Body Armor, so I was maxing out on 3 Reinforced Plating and 3 Body Armor. Of course, there was no Pierce or anything like that at the time. Your opponent can only have so many ramming speeds. Ramming speed was harder to search than Body Armor and Reinforced Plating, because Reinforced Plating was a upgrade, and the fact that you could play an action to find that upgrade and play that upgrade in the same turn made it a lot more viable for you to have more armors and outlast your opponent's ramming speeds. Because again, if your opponent, for example, played Incoming Transmission and drew ramming speed and another card and stacked a card on top of their deck, they can't play the ramming speed afterwards, and they're probably not playing Brainstorm because that in an orange deck just wasn't heard of at the time. So being that that's your action for the turn, it's a lot different. So if you didn't have the ramming speed or debilitating crystal, well, I guess you could Incoming Transmission or whatever and play your action to find drill arms or debilitating crystal. But outside of that, if they couldn't get those, like I said, you can Inspire Leadership, draw 3, discard 2, play it upgrade, play your Reinforced Plating. You could Incoming Transmission, actually. You could play any of those cards. Treasure Hunt. Treasure Hunt, again, can find those cards and be able to play that upgrade immediately and then send your guys in. Now, Reinforced Plating has definitely fallen to the wayside to cards like Sparring Gear. I'll be referring back to Reinforced Plating and such when I get to the Wave 2. By the way, again, like this video if you enjoy this content and something new that I'm doing. And depending on the reception that I get for this video, I will be doing the Wave 2 and so on. Next up, we have Repair Bay. So Repair Bay is a card that is on color and it heals all your guys for 1. So I can't say I would have ever played this card. I might have thought if healing was good. I probably would have thought healing was good without hearing the Vector Sigma podcast when I first started. But Healing, again, just like Medic, is not as good, but it is on color. So it is something that you could potentially side deck against 3Y Prime that is playing such heavy, direct damage cards. One of the things I think about with Repair Bay in terms of the new set, Wave 5 Type Masters Attack, is the new Optimus. So if all your characters have taken so much damage from things like Horrible or Magnetic Dysfunction Ray, you can kind of actually counteract that by playing Toolbox and then playing Repair Bay to heal all your guys for one, then heal another one on the character or characters that have Toolbox on them, and then also attack with Prime and then heal another one. So that's something to think about. Don't know how good it's going to be. There is a, that whoever made that Dinobot, the me Grimlock, you Grimlock, Optimus Dinobot sludge deck, shout out to you for creating that deck. I actually want to build that. I'm a big fan of two-tall decks, being that, you know, the double prime deck was my very first deck, so I'm always going to love two-tall for what it's worth, even if they're not necessarily so good, because 4 wide is better than 2 wide and they have more characters than you and blah, blah, whatever. But yeah, so like playing a card like Repair Bay in that deck, they both heal when they attack, Sludge and the Optimus, and if you have like a toolbox in at least one of them, it is amplified. So like you heal one off of each of them, you heal an extra one off the guy that has toolbox, and then you attack with Sludge, heal another one, and then another one off the toolbox. So I want to play it mixed, so the deck can actually have some hitting power, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. So be looking forward to maybe one of our live stream Sundays. I might actually finally build that deck. I have like almost 10 decks built right now, so that deck's not getting built anytime soon, but in the near future, be looking out for that deck. Next up, we have the other non-starred, and I keep saying non-starred, getting ahead of myself because we didn't even have star cards in Wave 1, but in Rollout. Rollout is an orange-blue battle icon, and it flips all of your characters from bot mode to alt mode. So this card was good in decks like maybe Dinobots, because Dinobots, this is, again, you don't have to necessarily flip all of your characters, but you can flip like your Grimlock and your Sludge. Sludge can like heal some damage from your other characters, and then Grimlock can give bolt to one of your characters. You really didn't use this in the 3Y Prime deck because you, well, did I? No, yeah, you didn't, because you don't want to flip Flame War. When you flip Flame War, you want to flip her once, so you don't flip her back to alt mode to give bolt to your characters. And usually, I mean, there's some, I take it back, there are times you do it to give Optimus some more bolt, to more cards to flip rather, and options for your actions. But other than that, you don't really use rollout with Battlefield Legend, because that's your action for the turn. So when you flip Prime back to grab an action, you can't play that action unless you play Brainstorm, rollout, and then whatever action you grabbed off Optimus. But definitely a very solid card. It's a card also that Metroplex really loved, because that was he was able to play rollout, flip to alt mode to deploy a character, and then flip back to bot mode, and then get an attacking with him with a upgrade and things like that. Now the card hasn't been seeing much play currently in Wave 5, but it's definitely a card. Is one of the we have a lot of not a lot, but we have a good bit of mixed icon cards now, but they're star cards. So like pincer movements, and like that's the first one that comes off the top of my head. But it's still, that and Nature's Leadership are definitely the freest you can get in terms of orange blue icons. So I definitely see that card coming back once we get out of this body mode era, because with body mode you cannot flip from body. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done. I swear I'm done. You can't flip from body mode to alt mode. It has to be specifically from bot mode to alt mode. So WTC is throwing us a lot more curveballs in terms of keywords. So definitely pay attention to that. Same with Hunker Down. Hunker Down, you can't flip an enemy or one of your characters from bot mode to tank mode because they have a body. Now, when they're already in tank mode, you can actually still retrieve the armor, but you can't actually do the flip. So keep that in mind. Next up, we have Salvage for Parts. Blank icon and scrap all upgrades. So that means everybody's upgrades, and repair one from each character for each upgrade scrapped. This is the reverse of, not the reverse, but it's kind of like computer sabotage. I really don't see any use for this card, especially because your opponent gets kind of use off of it, and I don't think it's worth a slot for a blank icon to really play. And if it didn't have play now, it doesn't have play, or if it didn't have play then, it doesn't have play now. There may be some type of bot that comes out later on where when they upgrade a scrap that he gets +1 attack or something like that. So once we get something like that in the future, when like the game evolves and we really start getting to a point where you can do more than just an action and upgrade and like just pour cards out of your hand or deck onto the field, this card could potentially have some use. Like, again, if we have a bot, or every time an upgrade is scrapped from a character, deal 1, or I guess doesn't new star, Wave 3 Starscream does something like that. But for now, card's not so good, but yeah. Next up, we have Scrapper Gauntless. Scrapper Gauntless is one of my favorite cards, as well as an orange battle icon that's an armor, and it gets +1 defense. And when you play it, you scrap an enemy armor, so it's, or an enemy weapon, excuse me. So it's the counterpart to drill arms. So having these in your deck gave you utility to disrupt your opponent, get rid of their energon ass, get rid of their power sword, get rid of whatever. And if they didn't have a weapon, you draw a card. So definitely a very good card. Could also use with Hunker Down. There are Stop, Jace. There are better armors to use these days, but it's still something I can still be see being played as a one-of potentially in certain tank decks or certain, like in a tank build that you want to tech one of, and I can definitely still see it being played. You know, just not as much as it used to be back in the day. Next up, we have the counterpart to, not necessarily the counterpart, but the counter in terms of icons in Security Checkpoint. So it is the premier card to control the game from your opponent in their orange deck or even in a blue deck and get rid of all their upgrades. You have all control because you were able to play one of your upgrades and then play the Security Checkpoint for your turn. I was notorious myself for having the card in my hand, plan on using it, play all my upgrades, and make sure I don't checkpoint until the turn my best guy attacks. So when Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend was attacking, I would checkpoint that turn, because that turn you have to top deck a upgrade unless you have Treasure Hunt to fish for upgrades, but then also you lost your action play for the turn to really strip your opponent of their cards. And then making a play like Body Armor, Flip Prime, play Security Checkpoint was very savage on your opponent, because if they only had Supercharge for their turn, it wasn't as good as having Grenade Launcher Supercharge or Flamethrower Supercharge or whatever the case was. So that was definitely a play that I definitely did often, was play Security Checkpoint only when my best guy attacked. Only other times I would play it is I really wasn't a big fan. I did get one-track mind in terms of trying to play as many upgrades out of my hand before I played the checkpoint. I really was never trying to lose any upgrades when I played the checkpoint. But there are some times where you do have to sacrifice, I'm talking about even now, where you do have to sacrifice an upgrade in order to potentially get rid of your opponent's upgrade. So that's something to think about. But this, unlike Peace to Tyranny, has been a steady good. So it's been good every set it's been in. It's never been like out of 10, it's been a 9 every set. Peace to Tyranny is a 10 in wave 3, is a 10 in wave 5, and is like a 9.7 in every other situation. Security Checkpoint, I can still checkpoint my opponent and lose. If you time your Peace to Tyranny right, which I don't see that often, you could definitely steal the game from your opponent. Checkpoint, they can still potentially come back, but Peace to Tyranny is just a whole other animal, and hence why it's definitely the best card in the game. But Security Checkpoint is definitely a very strong card. If you utilize it correctly and you catch your opponent at the right time, you actually can still win the game with Checkpoint. I'm not going to say you can't. You will, like, you know, potentially still lose games, but the potential is still a lot higher with playing Checkpoint than Peace to Tyranny. Because Peace to Tyranny, you're guaranteed to get an attack with your character. You're guaranteed to untap if you did it on all their tap characters. And you're guaranteed to be able to load up and play another action and upgrade and attack said character again and probably KO it. With Checkpoint, I can play Checkpoint early in the game, and they can top deck a work overtime. They can top deck a treasure hunt. They have characters where they have inborn pluses. You can Checkpoint Perceptor. Perceptor doesn't care because Perceptor can flip and then grab cards back. So you see what I'm saying? So like, there's not much you can do against Peace to Tyranny besides secret actions like Infiltrate or taking it out of their hand with Espionage, Counter Espionage, whatever. Next up, we have Shock Absorbers. I actually had to read this card because give me a second. Orange battle icon. When the upgraded character defends and you flip an equal number. Okay, so this is literally the opposite of Cybertronian, however you say it, Cybertronian Beau, and you can only. No, you cannot. You don't have to even put it on a card. It just has cards on it. This is another literal situational card like the Cybertronian Beau. If you want to play 3 Beau and 3 of this card in order to chance getting lucky and hitting, you know, equal number of oranges and blues, so the orange count towards your defense. By all means, go right ahead, but there's way too much luck involved. There's not enough focus in the game for me to even care about going through the hoops to jump through to try to get that to defend well. Just play sparring gear. Just play any other green, you know, blue-green armor. Next up, we have Start Your Engines. Literally the best car card in the game. Flip all your characters from bot mode to car mode, and then untap one of your cards. Card's insane. Wasn't as well, I'm not gonna say it wasn't as strong, but like with Bumblebee Legendary Warrior, you could swing with him early if you had Start Your Engines in your hand. Then you could start your engines him, flip him back to alt mode. Now his effect triggers where he can attack any character as if it was tapped. He can attack any untapped character as if it was tapped, and you can flip him back to bot mode. He'll still keep that effect, and then play a grenade launcher and go in on another character, whatever. Cars is very good, very strong. This was one of the ways that Cars was able to deal with bugs, being that similar to Ready for Action, like I was saying for Dinobots. Dinobots is about raw, just attack you, beat you down, power. Cars were all about untapping and getting more attacks out of their cars. Simply, and it just makes sense, you know, because cars are fast, so they untap, come at you again, hit you again, whatever. So, you know, being able to get one untap in Start Your Engines, or another card we're going to talk about in a couple spots from this Start Your Engines, is to be able to untap and, again, just like Ready for Action, have equal number of attacks with your opponent, you know, in their Insecticon deck. Now, Insecticon still had an edge over cars, but the more untaps you saw with cars, the better off you were. And that kind of actually just goes to be true for cars in general, like in every single format they've ever been in. So that's one of their biggest strengths, is to be able to untap. So Start Your Engines is definitely a very good card. We still have car support to this day in Wave 5. Card is still very strong and definitely the pinnacle of a card you should play in your card deck. Next up, we have Static Laser on Ironhide. This card was very insane for the fact that, so if it's not on Ironhide, the character that attacks takes 2 damage. You didn't really care about the 2 damage when your bot was probably going to go kill somebody, and that's something that took me a while to learn, especially with cards like Reckless Charge. But getting back on topic, so it's an orange battle icon that has +3 attack. Not many weapons in the game. Like, it's as close to grenade launcher as you're gonna get. Yes, you take 2 damage on your character, but you also keep the equipment on. Now, this card I remember was very good on Ransack, because Ransack, whenever he had as much attack as he had damage counters on him, so the card automatically was a +5, because the 2 damage that Ransack takes, he'd be at least 2 attack, and then the +3 from the Static Laser would give him +3, so he'd be at 5 before your battle flips. So if you played Static Laser or Ironhide, then a security or a security checkpoint, or a supercharge or whatever, your Ransack is actually getting in there for some crazy damage. And Ransack, by the way, was also insane too, because you had 3 good targets to take with I Still Function, and Ransack comes back with 1 health, meaning he has 7 attack, 7 base attack, and then you put a grenade launcher on him. He actually hurts too. So yeah. Card today is actually still pretty strong in certain decks. It's not as good as it used to be, because Wave 5 introduced so much direct damage. It's insane. So it's still good in certain decks, like the Sergeant Cup. Sergeant Cup, whenever one of your wreckers takes non-attack damage, they gain that much attack to the end of the turn. So when you take the 2 from Static Laser or Ironhide, it becomes a +5, because you take 2 damage on your cup, and then, you know, that's actually kind of insane. So the only thing that sucks about Cup is, well, 2 things that suck about Cup is he has 7 stars, so he's 8 stars with you know, at least a minimum of 1 head, or 1-star head, and then his low health pool. So being 8 stars minimum, I really felt like he should have had 13 to start or something like that, because I'm thinking about like cards like Autobot Mirage from Wave 3 or Wave 4 that had 13, but whatever, I digress. Next up, we have Strafing Run. Now, Strafing Run is similar to Armed Hovercraft, but I think it got outshined by one-shot stand, because the 3 damage on one character was so much more. But still, 1 damage to each enemy is not that bad, and especially against bugs, I could see myself potentially taking out one-shot stands for Strafing Runs, because a combo like Armed Hovercraft and Strafing Run against just the enemy is actually really insane. It's also good against wider decks. It's good against wide decks in general, because the reason why AoE damage like Armed Hovercraft and Strafing Run is really good, this is really directed towards newer players, is because the wider your deck is, 4 or 5 wide, the lower health pool your character is going to have. You know, if you have a 3 wide deck or a 2 tall deck, they most likely have higher health. So that's based off the distribution from the character to, or the health to character ratio usually. So 5 drops, you may see as high as 10 health with Flame War, or as little as like what's the lowest health 5 drop we have? 5 health with Headstrong. You know, the Predacon Headstrong. So it just depends on what you're trying to go for, but generally, like 1 damage to each of your opponent's characters that are playing a 5 wide deck, they usually probably have 10 or less health, and that 1 is just puts you so far ahead. You know, and then also, you know, that big bubble that we talked about with Armed Hovercraft. You know, you play Armed Hovercraft and Strafing Run on bugs, that's 2 health to each of their characters, and their whole health pool just goes down by 10. And bugs are definitely very weak to direct damage. Hence, you know, direct damage is kind of like a pesticide to the bugs. Hence why I love 3 wide prime, because screw bugs. That's right, I said it. Screw bugs. Okay, I'm done. Next up, we have Supercharge. Supercharge was I guess you can compare it to Leap into Battle as the pinnacle of a card that orange decks must play at 3. Playing this card with any combination of upgrade, especially, of course, the best one, Grenade Launcher, spells big damage for your characters. And the Bold 3 also facilitated, again, if you were ever worried about playing solo green cards or blank cards in your deck, you know, if you were going to flip those cards off the top of your deck anyway with no bold, the bold helps kind of filter through those whites and blanks to get through your cards that you want to see on attack, or vice versa on defense when you're playing tough. So something to think about. But Supercharge, not much more to say about it. in every single wave, I want to say the card's seen some play in some capacity. It's lost a little bit of favoritism to Fight for Position, because Fight for Position is a new supercharge. It just loses one bold but gains in the black icon, and then yeah, black icons are something we'll talk about a long time from now. Next up, we have swap missions. This card was very good. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend. When you attack with him and then you flip a swap missions off the top of your deck, you can untap him and then retap one of your other characters. And what's especially good about that is if it's a 3-wide on 3-wide and it's your turn and they're all tapped out, you can attack with Optimus, and let's say you have a Datapad on. You can draw from Datapad, stack the swap missions on top of your deck, flip the swap missions and another battle card off the top of your deck for your attack with Prime, and then play the swap missions, untap Prime, and then, oh, I said that wrong. Well, you have to have two characters. Like, you have to have one untapped and one retapped. Did I say that right? Tap your other bot and then untap the Prime, and then you can get another attack out of the Prime, which is very good. So I didn't see much use. I didn't really see much use with this card outside of Battlefield Legend. But that untap ability is not the same as Ready for Action or Turbo Booster or Start Your Engines, but it definitely still has some powerful uses. And it's not seeing any play today in today's metagame in Wave 5, but definitely something to keep in mind for the future. I think I'll take that back. Another deck. What's that deck? Major Soundwave. Major Soundwave untaps its cassettes when he attacks. So tapping one of your cassettes to attack and then playing swap missions, that card is very powerful in that deck as well. Shout out to Jamie for playing that card on me in our Deck Tech Challenge. You can go check out Bleeped Up Productions video with me versus Jamie, and he was playing a really cool Soundwave deck with Laserbeak and Fangry with the Doomshot head, which is really cool. So yeah, you untap the Soundwave, and then you untap Soundwave, and then you tap your Laserbeak, and then you attack with the Soundwave, and then you untap your cassette again. So swap missions actually do some really nasty plays with that deck. And next up, we have our very first ban card. When we talk about swapped, we're talking about swap parts. Swap parts is the card that really started combos, especially with multi-mission gear. Multi-mission gear was not banned the same time swap parts was, but and because that card proved to still be really good without swap parts. But swap parts simply says swap all upgrades between two of your characters, and it's when it says swap also technically means put based off the rulings. So if you had a card like, if you had two armed hovercrafts, I guess the best way to say that, already on your characters, you can, well actually, let's say you play armed hovercraft for your turn, you already have another armed hovercraft on your character, you can play swap parts, swap those armed hovercrafts, and trigger the armed hovercrafts again. So that same thing goes with scrapper gauntlets, drill arms, and a whole bunch of other cards that trigger when you put a upgrade on a character. So you can imagine the things that'll happen when you play multi-mission gear, play an action for your turn, then play swap parts for your action as well, then swap those upgrades, play another action, play Equipment Enthusiast, play Brainstorm, play whatever, and it's actually go off on your opponent, and it's actually insane. So swap parts has actually been our first ban card, and I see it coming back maybe in the future, but definitely with some revisions, and I know WOTC is being careful how they build characters and build cards. Now I will say, I like WTC banning cards because they were just too ridiculous, but then I also don't want them to tiptoe around power creep and powerful cards, because that makes the game fun and interesting. But then there also needs to be a balance of, well, if these guys get this, these guys probably should also get this, so it's not just one-sided and everybody's just playing this one deck as well. But WTC knows what they're doing. They're definitely going to articulate and come up with the best formula for us to be able to deal with. They like to tiptoe their feet into the water of new cards every once in a while, like beasts are the first thing that come to my mind. When they released the beasts, we saw Fangry, we saw Horrible, and Mind Wipe, and we didn't see the rest of the battle cards yet. And a lot of us were looking forward to, not assuming, but looking forward to a potential beast battle card for this set, and we actually didn't even get one. So I definitely look forward to a beast battle card next set, and hopefully a decent one to help. Horrible doesn't need any help, but Mind Wipe and Fangry out more. Next up, we have Swarm. Swarm is probably, I don't know what's more annoying, I Still Function in bugs or Swarm. Swarm is on color. This also promoted you playing mixed decks by playing an orange or a blue deck, but you still just played it all orange, because when you flipped how many ever oranges off the top of your deck, your opponent chooses one of their characters to deal 1 damage to per orange you flipped. So if you flip 3 improvised shields and a piece to Tyranny, your opponent has to deal 8 damage to their characters one by one, which is absolutely insane. Like, come on. Like, most of the time my opponents would get no less than 4 off their Swarm flip. We flip 4 cards. Oh no, you flip battle cards for each Insecticon you started the game with. So that's also what made the card really good. When it was a one-on-one situation and you weren't able to pick where you wanted to put the 1 damage at anymore, they would have their Barrage versus your Optimus, and they play Swarm, and it says for each Insecticon you started the game with. So even though they're not on the battlefield, you still flip 4 because you started with 4. And if I flip 3 or 4 or how many ever oranges, my prime has to take it all because he's the only character left on my side of the battlefield. Card's insane. Again, this is one of those cards that promoted mixed decks. So things like Bug Bomb in the deck, if you were to flip a blue, you could heal one of your Insecticons. I have seen people play blue bugs in the past and play the Swarm to heal their bugs. But again, healing is not as good as dealing damage, and that's just how it is. And that's where we're at right now. Next up, we have System Reboot. System Reboot in conjunction with Backup Plan. This card is actually probably a little better because it also disrupted your opponent. So if your opponent is playing a deck that builds up their hand a lot and is looking for a grand play, like skipping ahead, talking about Wave 4 and Daring Escape, you can System Reboot them and make them scrap all of their cards, and we both scrap all of our cards in our hand and draw 4 new cards. And just like the name suggests, you reboot and you just restart your systems and get a whole new, brand new hand. You're drawing 4 because 4 is what you initially start with when you play, the first turn of the game, and then obviously it dwindles down from there. And there's also a white battle icon, so it's a card that you can use as a 1 or 2 of in certain decks to be able to refill your hand and have some more playable cards. That card is also still seeing play to this day, as I mentioned with Wave 4. Even in Wave 5, I've played that card as a 1 of or a 2 of in certain decks, so definitely a card to stay around for the long haul. Next up, we have Team Up Tactics. This card was a dual purpose card where you could choose a car and draw 2, or choose a truck and heal 2. So now this heal 2 was a blue battle icon, but you also had to have a truck specifically, so it's not like you can heal anybody like Medic. So you see the correlation there. Medic can heal anybody, but it's a blank. Team Up Tactics is a blue, but it can only heal trucks. So you got to make sure you're in truck mode before you flip Optimus to your bot mode to get attacking or whatever the case is. So you had nice options with it. I don't think there was a car and truck to play that was competitive in order to play, but if I think about like Novastar from Wave 2 was really cool because it was a car and a truck, so you were able to heal her for 2 and draw 2, which is very cool and very strong. We have all the way up to Wave 5 now in Night Racer. Night Racer is a car, so if I need cards in my hand, I can choose to draw 2 and pick a card, or pick a card and choose to draw 2. If I need to heal 2 from Optimus or Crankcase or whatever, I can heal 2 off my truck. And so a very versatile card, and it's definitely gotten some playability and stronger over time to help try to push heal to a competitive limelight. And next up, we have one of the other best cards in the set. The bigger they are. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Gives +2 attack to a character and Pierce 4. And if it's attacking a character that has more stars in it, you get Pierce 4, simply as that. 4 is a lot, just like 3 is a lot from One Shot Stand, One Shot Fall. The card is on color. It's a 3-of that you played in the the 3-wide Prime deck. I go to 3-wide Prime so much, by the way, because that was the best blue deck of the format. So, but you can play it in any blue deck, and just as long as your character, you could give it to any of your characters for the +2, but it just wouldn't get the Pierce 4 unless you were attacking up. So I have 5 stars, you have 6 or more, I'm dealing 4 damage. I have 13 stars, and you have 14 stars. I'm attacking up, so I'll be able to get the Pierce 4. And even today, the bigger they are is definitely a very strong card, and has gotten stronger over time, especially in conjunction with the Galaxy Prime deck, how you can play Matrix off the top of your deck or whatever when you attack with the Prime, and then if you have the bigger they are on one of your characters, that's +3 attack, +3 Pierce 5 pretty much, because that 1 for the Matrix spreads over to your Flame War, and then Flame War gets +2 attack for the bigger they are, Pierce 4, and then +1 and Pierce 1 for the Matrix, so that's 5 Pierce 5, before flip. So if you have an Energon Axe, that's 8 Pierce 7, so it can actually just kind of scale up mid to late game and get kind of crazy. So definitely one of the best cards of the game, and also another one of my favorite cards, being in Wave 1, the bigger they are. Next up, we have Treasure Hunt. Treasure Hunt was a definitely solid search card to get your upgrades. It was a card you used one or 2 of in the 3-wide Prime deck, or even the double Prime deck, and there's definitely a 2 to 3 of in Dinobots and Insecticons to be able to search for your grenade launchers. This was the worst time to ever draw Improvised Shield, because you really didn't have other ways to get Improvised Shield out of your hand besides incoming transmission, but the risk or the reward outweighed the risk in terms of grabbing grenade launchers, flamethrowers, jaws of steel, and power swords, etc. Card is even still seeing some play today, not as much play as it used to, but I'm for example playing it in my Mega Quake deck. I'm playing a couple in this deck me and Scott are working on, this Chrome Dome version 2 of that deck. You'll be seeing that on stream here soon as well. And yeah. And the next up, we have Turbo Boosters. Turbo Boosters is the other card in conjunction with Start Your Engines. Is 6 cards in your deck that are untaps. The cards deck, I think they might have played 1 or 2 ready for actions depending on the player and build. But this card was also one of the cornerstone cards to be able to untap one of your cards in alt mode and or in card mode, which is alt mode, same thing, and get additional attacks out of that character. Now it does give +1 attack, and it is an orange battle icon, so that's really cool. And being able to again get more attacks and kind of even the playing field, that's similar logic, you know, versus wider decks. Not even necessarily against wider decks. I never talk about the pro on that side of untapping. So if you're playing against another 3-wide deck in general, whether it's, you know, 3-wide prime or whatever, you still get more attacks than your opponent, similar to how bugs have 4 characters and get more attacks as well. So definitely a very strong card. This is a card that I'm again playing currently in wave 5 at 3 in a special deck, and I'll be showing you guys that deck on stream. Well, Scott, one of us, will be showing it on stream here eventually, so be looking forward to that. And then last but not least, we done. Zap. 81 of 81. Well, we're done, but we're not done. There's still 5 other cards to talk about, but those will be quick. Again, shout out to you guys at Vector Sigma. 2 hours-ish. This is crazy. Deal 1 damage to an enemy, period. So whether it's tapped, untapped, bot mode, alt mode, body mode, combiner mode, doesn't matter. Deal 1 damage to an enemy. Now, this card has been power crept, but it's still potentially a solid option. I can see people going back to old school roots just to get that simple +1. You have cards like Rock Toss, which is a worse zap, but it is a orange-black icon. But you also still, it's kind of worse because Rock Toss can only deal 1 damage to a tapped enemy, but it's still got the orange, and it also has a black icon. So that's up for debate on which is better, but Zap is one of the cards that Bugs also played in conjunction with One Shall Stand, in conjunction with Swarm. Also playing a Zap, direct damage again, getting rid of that character that has 1 health. Picture this, you don't want to have your Barrage attacking a bot that only has 1 health left. You have 5 Bold 2. You're going to overkill that bot by 1,000. Imagine just playing the Zap on that character and then just getting rid of that character and being able to attack somebody else. Or, speaking of Barrage again, Barrage only gets Bold 2 on characters that are damaged. You can play Zap on a character that's not damaged, and all of a sudden, hey, look, he's damaged. 5 Bold 2. So Zap Power Punch or Power Sword. Well, Power Sword, all Bold didn't flip. Zap Grenade Launcher, whatever. So, yeah, definitely a very strong card for in its time being. Again, it's not being seen any play right now because it's been power crept to hell. But, yeah. So, we're finally done, kind of. And next up, we're going to talk about the 2 promo cards. All Out Attacks and Tandem Targeting System. Tandem Targeting System is an interesting card, and I wish the card said you can fit 3 tandem targeting systems in 1 weapon slot, in the weapon slot. That would have made it a lot better. So if you have 1 tandem targeting system in your hand and 2 in your scrap pile, you can play all 3 on all 3 of your characters if they don't have weapons, which is pretty cool. It's +1 attack, and it is on color, but other than that, it's not as good. So if you could at least have at least 2 tandem targeted systems on 1 character, being able to play that +1 and then all of a sudden get another +1 from your scrap pile, and the card being on color and having a +1 attack could have been better. But other than that, I don't think this card's ever seen any competitive play. Then next up, we have All Out Attacks, a card that seems like it's good, but if you don't kill any of your opponent's bots, it's not as good. So you take all of your characters, and all of your characters get to attack this turn. Keep in mind, of course, new players, if you're on the Axis or if you're learning the game, you'll know that you can only attack with 1 character per turn, unless your opponent has all of their bots tapped. Thus, you have to attack with all of your characters until all characters are tapped, and then we all untap. All Out Attacks is not as good. Oh, and by the way, each of your untapped Transformers, the card specifically says. But the problem with this card is, depending on what point of the game, if you play it in the early game, you may not have all of your bots. Like, say you on your first turn. If it's your first turn, you can't play any actions anyway. And if it's your opponent's first turn, on your first turn, which is the second turn, you get to play 1 action or upgrade. You have to send all of your bots into their 1 tapped bot. And the tapped bot that they probably sent out isn't something that, like, isn't their main character. So, like, for instance, Flip Flame War attack with Hot Rod, or Flip Flame War attack with, 7-star Optimus or whoever. Okay, yeah, you send in your 4 attacks with your Insecticons. First of all, most of your Insecticons aren't in the mode they want to be in, so you have to decide if you're going to flip Barrage or Kickback, your 2 best attackers, and then send all of them in. So the fact that you only get 1 flip and all of your attacks aren't going to be efficient, and then on top of that, it's just not as good. And then, mid to late game, bots have probably been KO'd, so the card also has lost some value. So there's potential. Like, there was the All Out Attacks cards deck that was played that was very powerful, that played like Datapads and things like that. So that card that was All Out Attacks was very good in that deck. But outside of that, the card just isn't very good. it's not worth it. The card is very good, but it's not worth it right now. If we get more decks like the Anticipation Cards deck that can play that outside of that deck, definitely can see this card having some value. Now, speaking of value, this is one of the most expensive cards in the game because it came out of the promo pack, as well as a tandem targeting system from the SDCC promo pack. So it's a pretty penny to keep that in mind, but they do look cool, especially the reprints that came with the Energon edition. So definitely something to keep in mind. And then let's talk about the Metroplex structure deck. This deck had 3 promo cards that were special to it in Height Advantage. So Height Advantage being the first one and the best one out of the 4, or out of the 3 actually, where the 4 comes from. It is a blue battle icon that gives Bold 4. Bold 4 to one of your Titans. Metroplex, I'm about to say Masterplex. Metroplex was the only Titan in the game at the time. Bold 4 on him. He has 6 attack, Bold 4. You play a, flamethrower or whatever on him. He's getting in for a lot of damage, or a lot of bold, including the bold that the little guys give as well. So I've actually had opponents flip that many cards, like Bold 7 or something like that, and actually still not hit the effect. That's just luck of the draw, or luck of the flip, bad luck of the flips rather. But usually, they're going to hit the effect if they draw Height Advantage. The Height Advantage is also a really good card to play on your turn 2 when you made your opponent go first and they send their character in. And Metroplex is so strong, so you could top deck, or not, you could have Height Advantage, play it, attack, potentially hit the effect, and then tap all of your opponent's other characters, so now they can't get in multiple swings in your Metroplex. Definitely a very strong card. Next up, we have Protected My Metroplex. Protected My Metroplex reminds me of Heroism, card we reviewed way earlier, and it's an orange battle icon. Utility that gives no attack or defense, but any non-attack damage that any attack damage your other characters would take, Metroplex takes instead. So it helps your little guys stay alive longer. I don't think it was ever worth it to play in the deck over Matrix of Leadership. Despite Matrix of Leadership not being able to spread because none of the characters are leaders, you were able to still be able to flip that card off of. That's one less card you had to worry about when you were trying to meet the requirement for Metroplex to hit 2 of every color in order to trigger his tap ability. And last but not least, we have a white battle icon card, a draw card in Rally the City. You draw 1 card for each character you have in the battlefield. As long as you have Metroplex in the battlefield, you draw 1 card for each character you have in the battlefield. So you can draw a maximum of 4 if you had all 4 of them out. But chances are a lot of them are probably going to be KO'd pretty early, especially against an aggressive deck. So this card is a mid to late game card that would see its maximum value, but it won't get there again because a lot of your characters will be dead. And at that point, you're probably just better off playing Incoming Transmission, or I don't know what draw cards that Metroplex played, but I know this wasn't one of them that was worth playing. Now it is a white, I'm not going to say it's the worst. I don't think I gave it much of a chance based off of, I think, seeing Vin from VS playing Metroplex, but yeah. So that's it. We're done. Wave 1 battle cards. I imagine that the characters won't be so bad because there's only like 40 or 50-ish characters in the character section, but that was a lot of work. So the editing on this video is going to be insane. I appreciate you guys hanging out here with me. If you guys legit listen to this entire video from beginning to end, I applaud you, because I babbled, but I had a right to babble because we were talking about all the battle cards from Wave 1. And again, look for the character. Yeah, like my son said, look forward to the characters from Wave 1 review coming up very soon. Again, shout out to the homies at VS. Shout out to the patron, the tournament tier that we're doing for Vector Sigma. You can find out more information on the Facebook, but pretty much to keep it simple and sweet, $15, playing at webcam tournaments. Obviously, webcams required. And you can win a really nice amount of prizes, throughout the top 8. And the biggest thing about that is $15 for the tournament tier is pretty much like an entry fee. I mean, you pay per month, but none of the guys from VS can win any of those prizes. So it's total transparency. Scott can win the entire tournament. Dan can win the entire tournament. All four of us, 4 out of 5 or 6 of us can top 4 the tournament, which probably won't happen. We're going to get our asses kicked because those guys in the Patreon, they're definitely doing their thing and learning. But 4 guys from VS can top 4. And 5th through 8th will get all the prizes. We can't win any prizes. So it's literally just giving the money back to you in a special way, and we're able to play in a tournament and get heads popped off with Titan Master Attack. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to get up out of here. This video is just about 2 hours, if not over 2 hours after some editing. I appreciate you guys being here, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. You guys know what it is. You guys have a great day and or night whenever you're catching this video. This is your homie S. Dot, DeathTF, heading out. Take care, guys. Peace.